do processo que decorre em Portugal na luta contra a ditadura e do processo que decorre nos países africanos, na altura colónias portuguesas, dos movimentos de libertação contra o colonialismo português. E o que para nós foi extraordinário na vivência desse dia foi um profundo sentido de libertação. As pessoas hoje não fazem ideia, quando vivem em Portugal, do que é viver num país onde não há liberdade de organização, nem de sindicatos, nem de associações as mais diversas, não há liberdade de expressão, há censura, a expressão artística é condicionada e há uma forte repressão a todos aqueles que ousam criticar a ditadura em Portugal e, ao mesmo tempo, uma opressão extremamente pesada sobre os países, na altura, as colónias portuguesas, onde, aliás, o nível da repressão era muitíssimo mais violento do que em Portugal, propriamente dito. Ora, hoje nós consideramos que é normal viver em democracia, que é normal dizer o que pensamos, que é normal organizarmos-nos como entendemos para defender os nossos interesses e não damos valor ao que foi o extraordinário combate dos movimentos de libertação africanos e a extraordinária coragem daqueles que, em Portugal, primeiro os militares e depois o povo, que se juntou maciçamente nas ruas, nos libertaram da ditadura e nos libertaram da opressão colonial. É um sentido de, como disse, profunda libertação, ao qual hoje já não somos capazes de dar o devido valor, porque as novas gerações não tiveram essa experiência do que é viver num regime ditatorial e num regime opressivo de outros povos.
Secretário-Geral, naquele momento, o que fez com que o senhor e todos aqueles que se levantaram contra a autocracia em Portugal acreditassem que estavam do lado certo da história?
Vamos lá ver. Em primeiro lugar, uma ditadura é algo de inaceitável. Todos, mulheres e homens, temos os mesmos direitos e todos temos uma aspiração profunda à liberdade. E, portanto, estar do lado da liberdade contra a opressão é estar do lado certo. Acho que isso não tem dúvida nenhuma. Mas aqui também há um aspecto de estar do lado certo do ponto de vista histórico. O colonialismo foi o que foi e foi um processo que durou séculos e que teve consequências trágicas para os países colonizados. Podemos falar da escravatura como um dos aspectos e do movimento transatlântico da escravatura como uma das maiores tragédias da humanidade. Simultaneamente, nós assistimos, durante um período largo da história da humanidade, à possibilidade de um conjunto de países que se desenvolveram mais rapidamente, do ponto de vista tecnológico, com armamentos mais modernos, etc., de oprimirem uma grande parte do resto do mundo. Ora bem, há aqui um movimento natural. Num dado momento é preciso restabelecer a igualdade entre os povos. É preciso restabelecer a liberdade de todos os povos. E aí, infelizmente, Portugal veio muito tarde. Quer dizer, se alguma coisa podemos criticar no 25 de Abril, ou podemos criticar, foi que o 25 de Abril, do ponto de vista histórico, deveria ter ocorrido décadas mais cedo. A ideia de que era possível manter um império colonial no século XX, como o Salazar pensava, era não só uma ideia profundamente inaceitável do ponto de vista político e moral, mas era uma ideia absurda, porque era evidente que um país pobre e pequeno como Portugal não tinha condições para o fazer e hoje muitas vezes não se tem a noção do que foi também o sofrimento dos portugueses, que levou mais de 1 milhão de portugueses, na década de 60, a sair do país. Muitos deles porque não queriam fazer o serviço militar, muitos outros porque simplesmente o país não estava a desenvolver-se e não estava a criar as condições e as oportunidades necessárias. E, portanto, é claro que estamos do lado certo da história, libertando um país da ditadura, e estamos do lado certo da história, restabelecendo justiça nas relações internacionais, depois de um passado colonial que é inaceitável.
Senhor Secretário-Geral, para terminar, alguma mensagem ou comentário adicional que queira deixar para assinalar estes 50 anos do 25 de Abril?
Uma mensagem de grande esperança de que a comunidade dos países de língua portuguesa, que está em todos os continentes, e onde há hoje um profundo sentido de fraternidade, que infelizmente falta no mundo, onde vemos divisões profundas, guerras e conflitos por toda a parte, que esta comunidade, que é um símbolo de paz, possa ter um papel decisivo em restabelecer a confiança que está perdida, infelizmente, no nosso mundo e em restabelecer as condições que nos possam permitir não apenas mais paz, mas ao mesmo tempo um desenvolvimento mais justo, o respeito dos direitos humanos e a ultrapassagem das dramáticas divisões que hoje pesam sobre nós todos como uma ameaça ao futuro da humanidade.
Obrigada pela sua participação nesta discussão e antes de prosseguirmos com os embaixadores, vamos assistir a algumas memórias de há 50 anos.
Agora, neste segmento da discussão, cada embaixador terá 2 minutos para responder às nossas perguntas. Vou seguir por ordem alfabética, começando com Angola. Embaixador, qual a importância da Revolução dos Cravos no seu país?
A Revolução dos Cravos teve uma grande importância para Angola porque criou a dinâmica que levou à independência do país. Um processo que foi difícil e complexo, até porque um dia depois do 25 de Abril, o movimento das Forças Armadas falava na importância de se encontrar uma solução política para a guerra, mas, entretanto, considerava importante um debate sobre a questão ultramarina. Portanto, não havia claramente uma declaração da importância da autodeterminação dos povos sob domínio colonial. Isso aconteceu em julho com a aprovação da Lei sobre a Descolonização, em que Portugal reconheceu o direito de autodeterminação e independência dos povos, que ficou ainda mais clara esse desejo de Portugal avançar neste processo quando o secretário-geral das Nações Unidas, Kurt Waldheim, visitou Portugal em agosto e Portugal deixou claramente que esse seria o caminho a seguir e que os movimentos de libertação seriam os interlocutores legítimos neste processo que levaria à independência. Portanto, para nós foi um passo importante, o 25 de Abril, mas foi necessário continuar a pressionar para que, efetivamente, a independência fosse uma realidade no nosso país.
E para o Brasil, embaixador?
Bem, para o Brasil, o 25 de abril teve um grande impacto, porque Portugal era um país muito próximo de nós. Nós estávamos vivendo, naquele momento, uma fase muito difícil do nosso próprio regime militar. Tinha terminado o governo Médici, que foi um governo especialmente duro, e começava, assim, uma ideia de uma abertura lenta e gradual. E, certamente, a Revolução dos Cravos teve o impacto de mostrar que havia um caminho, que havia uma esperança. Eu acho que isso foi muito bem captado pelo Chico Buarque naquela canção Todo Mar, né? E nós, acho que a partir dali, o Brasil, naturalmente seguindo também um processo interno, começaria a trilhar um caminho de redemocratização que demoraria ainda algum tempo, ela se concretizou apenas em 1985, mas sem dúvida nenhuma o 25 de abril teve esse impacto. E ele teve um outro impacto importante, que foi nos libertar do jugo do colonialismo português, porque nós tínhamos uma contradição muito forte na nossa política externa. Nós reconhecíamos a independência de todas as ex-colônias francesas, britânicas, holandesas, mas nos mantínhamos presos ao colonialismo português e o 25 de abril e as suas imediatas consequências nos libertaram prontamente desse jugo e nós fomos o primeiro país a reconhecer Angola e depois fomos dos primeiros a reconhecer cada uma das ex-colônias portuguesas. Eu acho que esse é o principal impacto naquele momento.
Vou pedir para a embaixadora falar agora sobre Cabo Verde, né? Como é que foi? Qual é a importância?
Em Cabo Verde também é uma data de inestimável valor. Como sabe, na altura, os nossos, então ainda jovens, mais tarde, os primeiros dirigentes do país, alguns encontravam-se em Portugal, onde tinham estabelecido amizades com portugueses que foram, portanto, os fundadores ou os que estiveram na origem dessa revolução, mas também com colegas dos outros países de língua portuguesa, os PALOP. Outros encontravam-se na Guiné-Bissau, onde decorria na altura ainda, e infelizmente, essa luta pela libertação dos dois povos. E então é uma data que está na base daquilo que depois viria a ser um dos valores fundamentais da nossa Constituição, da nossa sociedade, a liberdade e a democracia.
Senhora Embaixadora, agora Moçambique, qual foi o impacto que esta Revolução dos Escravos teve no seu país?
Teve um grande impacto, mas para contextualização, creio que as palavras do Sr. Secretário-Geral das Nações Unidas foram extremamente úteis, porque ilustram a convergência da luta pela libertação dos nossos povos nas 5 colônias e a luta do povo português pela liberdade. E é por isso que nós olhamos sempre numa perspectiva de complementaridade entre Portugal e Moçambique, neste caso. Devemos ter em conta que se tratou de uma luta comum dos nossos 2 povos, dos nossos 5, 6 povos, no sentido de que, se por exemplo olharmos para a dinâmica da Revolução dos Escravos, o maior mentor, ideólogo do golpe de Estado em Portugal, o Sr. Otelo Saraiva de Carvalho, foi uma pessoa que nasceu em Moçambique e, claro, veio a crescer em Portugal. O cantor da famosa canção Grândola Vila Morena, Zeca Afonso, foi uma pessoa que esteve em Moçambique durante longos anos, ensinou numa escola secundária. Portanto, há uma grande complementaridade entre a busca de liberdade entre os nossos 2 povos.
Obrigada, Sr. Embaixador. Agora, Portugal, o país onde esta revolução aconteceu, conte-nos um pouco do impacto desta revolução para Portugal e para os portugueses.
A Revolução de Abril abriu caminho para os 3 Ds. O D de democracia, termos de facto um Estado de Direito, o respeito pelos direitos humanos, a liberdade de associação, a liberdade de expressão, a liberdade de opinião, que são absolutamente fundamentais e básicos. Pela primeira vez estamos a viver mais anos de democracia do que anos de ditadura. Abriu caminho para o segundo D, que os meus colegas já falaram, o D da descolonização, o direito da autodeterminação dos povos. Abriu caminho também nesse aspecto para uma nova a nova atuação de Portugal nas Nações Unidas, abrindo caminho para uma nova imagem do país aqui nas Nações Unidas, a partir do momento em que terminou a guerra e se iniciaram os processos de descolonização. E, finalmente, o último D, o D do desenvolvimento, da criação de um Estado social com políticas de apoio à igualdade, com políticas que são fundamentais para os cidadãos e que nos trouxeram até à adesão à União Europeia e que permitiu essa continuidade de desenvolvimento que nós temos até hoje. Os 3 Ds estão bem presentes e são fundamentais para a continuidade de Portugal.
Obrigada, Sra. Embaixadora. Por fim, Timor-Leste, qual foi o impacto da Revolução dos Escravos para o seu país?
25 de abril foi o ponto culminante do esforço dos timorenses para também poder ser independentes. E essa data, atualmente, colocou o Timor-Leste num processo onde facilitou a introdução dos partidos políticos pela primeira vez em Timor-Leste para escolher qual é o caminho do futuro. Mas, por outro lado, depois da retirada da administração portuguesa, na altura, o nosso país vizinho depois entrou e então a situação mudou drasticamente e tínhamos que lutar para depois poder resistir, para depois poder ter o nosso direito à autodeterminação em 1999. Mas, quer dizer, o que eu quero dizer é que o impacto era assim muito enorme, em que Portugal continuava a ser a potência administrante de Timor-Leste, Nações Unidas, e com quem Timor-Leste dependia para poder continuar a sustentar a política e, ao mesmo tempo, em Timor, a ligação cultural, política e o uso da língua continuava a manter-se como uma identidade distinta naquela área, zona da Ásia, e ajudou tanto esse processo todo da resistência até 1999, onde Portugal continuava a manter a sua posição. E claro que com a ajuda e o apoio de todos os países da CPLP.
Agora eu quero saber das relações que começaram depois da Revolução dos Cravos entre os países do bloco lusófono. Além da língua em comum, que outros fatores ajudaram a construir essas novas relações? Começando, embaixador, primeiro por Angola.
Então, depois da Revolução do 25 de Abril e da Independência, estabeleceram-se relações de cooperação com vantagens recíprocas para o desenvolvimento, no nosso caso, no desenvolvimento de Angola. Nesse aspecto, continuamos a cooperar com Portugal em várias áreas e é uma relação que se reforça com o tempo, não só baseado nos laços históricos, mas também numa visão do futuro e daquilo que podemos fazer na defesa dos nossos interesses na arena internacional.
Embaixador, e para o Brasil?
No Brasil, com o processo que se seguiu à Revolução dos Cravos, criou-se para nós um parceiro extraordinário na Europa. Não é? Nós dizemos às vezes que Portugal é a nossa porta de entrada na Europa, eu acho que isso é verdade. Nós passamos a ter ali um país que se desenvolveu muito, que aderiu à União Europeia, é um membro muito ativo da União Europeia, hoje em dia é um país plenamente desenvolvido, com grandes investimentos no Brasil e com essa capacidade de ser para nós um interlocutor muito privilegiado, tanto nos nossos assuntos europeus quanto em todo o mundo. E com os países, as ex-colônias portuguesas, o 25 de abril nos permitiu começar relações muito intensas com esses países. E nós hoje temos sido, ao longo de todo esse período, parceiros de grande importância para esses países, eles também para nós. Há uma relação de grande intensidade em todos os planos econômico-comercial, no plano político, obviamente, trabalhando nas Nações Unidas, no âmbito da CPLP, e no âmbito cultural também, cultural e educacional. Portanto, o 25 de abril abriu para nós uma enorme perspectiva, não só em relação a Portugal e à Europa, como no mundo em desenvolvimento, complementando muito aquilo que nós fazíamos já com outros países, especialmente na África.
E para Cabo Verde, embaixadora?
Para Cabo Verde, essa revolução permitiu não começar, mas continuar essa profunda amizade que unia os povos. Portugal, as ex-colónias, Brasil, enfim, havia ali uma união, uma amizade muito forte que antecedeu a própria revolução, que contribuiu para a revolução e que ajudou para que o processo da descolonização pós 25 de Abril acelerasse. A cooperação bilateral Cabo Verde-Portugal é excelente desde a primeira hora. Ela ultrapassa, como já disse, uma relação entre Estados, é uma relação entre povos. Com os restantes países é a mesma coisa. Há ali uma amizade, uma camaradagem, uma familiaridade uns com os outros que ajuda e muito a cooperação entre nós e que lançou as bases para que mais tarde se fundasse a CPLP.
Faço a mesma pergunta a Moçambique. Além da língua, que outros elementos ajudaram a moldar estas relações do bloco da CPLP?
Temos relações de profundo afeto, de profunda irmandade e de profunda solidariedade. Creio que isto tem origem na maneira como conquistamos todos a liberdade. E foi, em grande medida, essa base que levou à criação, em 1996, com o primeiro-ministro e presidente português, o seu primeiro-ministro estava aqui, em 1996, em julho de 96, a criação da CPLP. A CPLP é um modelo totalmente diferente do modelo de Commonwealth ou da francofonia. É um modelo de Estados soberanos, mas ligados por um vínculo de profunda fraternidade. Portanto, o 25 de Abril deu-nos essa base, esse impulso, para que hoje tenhamos esse afeto que une os nossos países.
Senhora Embaixadora, sem dúvida que a língua é um fator de união fundamental, mas que outros elementos ajudaram a moldar estas relações?
Eu diria que a língua é, sem dúvida, esse fator agregador, mas também a riqueza que nos traz a diversidade cultural. A riqueza de podermos falar na mesma língua com culturas tão diversas como aquelas que formam os países da CPLP. Isso dá-nos uma dimensão, uma riqueza, uma profundidade muito grande, que se reflete depois ao nível político, as relações políticas que são excelentes, ao nível económico e também ao nível do apoio ao desenvolvimento e as pontes que Portugal consegue fazer e pode fazer com todos estes países e através destes países, com todos os continentes onde eles estão, que nos permite chegar longe em conjunto. Este chegar longe em conjunto é fundamental aqui nas Nações Unidas, onde a CPLP tem um lugar muito relevante para conseguirmos trabalhar num momento em que as relações internacionais se encontram numa fase bastante tensa. Ter um conjunto de países que é capaz de trabalhar em conjunto e trazer propostas novas para cima da mesa, propostas de paz, de igualdade, de respeito mútuo, de cooperação internacional é extremamente relevante.
Faço então a mesma pergunta a Timor-Leste. Além da língua, que outros elementos moldaram estas relações?
Timor-Leste tem vindo com uma experiência quase única, no sentido de que depois da ocupação indonésia, em 1999, depois do referendo, a língua portuguesa foi reintroduzida e é uma das línguas oficiais do país, para além do teto, língua local. Mas, para além da língua que é usada na administração, no sistema jurídico e também no comércio e outras coisas, a afinidade histórica, a afinidade política e outras, incluindo também há muitos timorenses que ainda continuam a manter-se a cidadania como cidadãos portugueses, quer dizer, enriqueceram mais essa ligação entre Portugal e Timor-Leste. E os sucessivos governos de Timor-Leste também trabalharam intimamente com o governo português em termos de definir programas, e estamos agora nesse momento e conseguimos fazer um pacote de programa principalmente na área de educação, na área da saúde e também do desenvolvimento da infraestrutura, e continua a ter um impacto assim muito grande, e eu acho que nesse momento há muitos timorenses também que estão em Portugal a frequentar as universidades portuguesas, por isso essa ligação continua e está sendo mais forte nesse momento.
Essa revolução deixou um legado importantíssimo, né? 50 anos depois, qual caminho devemos seguir pensando em bloco? Começo com o senhor, embaixador.
Eu acho que nós precisamos de reforçar as nossas relações a nível da CPLP. Servir a CPLP como um instrumento que nos possa levar ao desenvolvimento, a consecução dos objetivos de desenvolvimento, que nos permita termos uma posição mais assertiva em conjunto a nível da comunidade internacional, naquelas questões que nós julgamos importantes para os nossos povos, para as nossas nações, de maneira que a base histórica que temos, as relações culturais, uma língua comum, que sirvam de elementos para levar-nos a outros patamares a nível da comunidade internacional e que possamos, em conjunto, trabalharmos para o desenvolvimento dos nossos respectivos países e para a defesa dos nossos interesses num mundo cada vez mais globalizado e mais competitivo.
Embaixador, como que o Brasil vê essa questão?
Nós temos que fortalecer a nossa cooperação em todos os âmbitos possíveis e imagináveis. Nós temos que nos dar conta de quanto a língua facilita isso para nós, de quanto nós temos de desafios comuns, mesmo tendo entre os países da CPLP um país muito desenvolvido como é Portugal, mas nós temos temas comuns. Por exemplo, nós somos todos países marítimos, né, com interesses marítimos muito fortes. Aí é uma área de cooperação enorme que nós podemos desenvolver. Nós temos várias outras áreas em que nós podemos utilizar a facilidade da língua para intercambiar experiências, desenvolvermos-nos de maneira comum, conjunta. Eu acho que esse aqui é o grande ponto. Eu acho que essa consciência da facilidade que gera para nós a língua é o ponto a desenvolver. A partir daí, todo o resto virá com muita facilidade.
Desafios e muitos interesses em comuns, né?
Sem dúvida.
Embaixadora, Cabo Verde.
Eu pegaria na questão da língua portuguesa, que o embaixador do Brasil aqui tão bem sublinhou. Nós, pelo número de falantes de português que somos neste momento, temos uma causa comum, que é conseguir termos a língua portuguesa como língua oficial nas Nações Unidas. É a língua que nos une, é a língua na qual nós choramos, cantamos, amamos, enfim. Temos o desenvolvimento sustentável, naturalmente, é uma causa também comum, obviamente com desafios diferentes para uns e outros, dependentes não só da nossa localização geográfica, mas também de outras características. E temos aqueles valores comuns, universais, nos quais temos sido grandes e acérrimos defensores. Os direitos humanos, a liberdade, a democracia, o direito ao desenvolvimento e por aí fora. E eu penso que como bloco, como número significativo de pessoas, portanto, que representa a CPLP, temos essa meta, essa missão e esse desafio de fazer ouvir a nossa voz e fazer valer essa solidariedade e utilizá-la também como exemplo na arena internacional.
Obrigada, Sr. Embaixador. Para Moçambique, qual o caminho a seguir para o Bloco?
Eu continuo a pensar que o reforço da CPLP continua a ser o caminho mais certo para desenvolver e alavancar as nossas relações. E a CPLP assenta em 3 pilares, que é o desenvolvimento da língua portuguesa para todos nós, importante, é a concertação político-diplomática e a cooperação. Portanto, caberá aos governos dos 8 países reforçarem, utilizarem a CPLP como um instrumento fundamental no desenvolvimento das nossas relações. Estamos inseridos em continentes diferentes e isso é uma vantagem, mas temos que encontrar caminhos muito concretos de reforçar as nossas relações.
Senhora Embaixadora, aqui Cabo Verde falou da possibilidade de tornar o português uma das línguas oficiais, assim aqui é das Nações Unidas. Portugal poderá trabalhar nesse sentido?
Sem dúvida nenhuma, estamos a fazê-lo já com todos os parceiros da CPLP para tentar que a língua portuguesa seja efetivamente uma das línguas de trabalho das Nações Unidas, dado o seu número de falantes, dada a sua relevância internacional. Como dizia a Sra. Embaixadora, temos que fazer ouvir a nossa voz em português, aqui nas Nações Unidas. E fazê-la ouvir significa trabalhar em conjunto. Trabalhar em conjunto nas áreas que já foram identificadas, sobretudo temos muito a fazer na coordenação política, na coordenação das questões de segurança e defesa, que são neste momento um aspecto fundamental, também em tudo o que tem a ver com o desenvolvimento sustentável, com a luta contra as alterações climáticas, aqui a problemática dos oceanos, que é fundamental para todos nós e que nos afeta de sobremaneira, e a ideia de que em conjunto podemos fazer também algumas declarações conjuntas no Conselho de Segurança, na Assembleia Geral e fazê-las sempre que possível em língua portuguesa para que o resto do mundo consiga ouvir-nos na nossa língua comum e consiga, a partir daí, entender esta nossa comunidade, que é uma comunidade de valores, efetivamente, uma comunidade de expressão, uma comunidade de valores que nos unem em relação à defesa dos direitos humanos, à liberdade, à democracia, à ideia de que juntos podemos construir um mundo melhor.
Obrigada. Por fim, Timor-Leste, qual o caminho a seguir por este bloco?
Para Timor-Leste, a CPLP é um ponto de entrada ao mundo. Os países membros são países que estão localizados em diferentes partes do mundo e o esforço na reintrodução da língua portuguesa em Timor-Leste está a ser mais intensiva, trabalhando juntamente com Portugal nesse sentido, e estamos empenhados para avançar com esse programa da CPLP em fazer, tornar-se português como uma língua das Nações Unidas. Mas, para além disso, também trabalhamos em várias áreas e, principalmente, Portugal está muito empenhado, e Brasil também, na economia azul. Eu acho que Timor-Leste também está de acordo. E, para além disso, nos outros pacotes de desenvolvimento, como eu tinha dito, devemos, trabalhar junto em cooperação. Na área de justiça, para além em Portugal, também trabalhamos com o Cabo Verde, e estamos também a procurar meios para trabalhar mais intimamente com os outros países membros da CPLP, mesmo que Timor está distante naquela área do mundo, mas, continua a ser um grupo membro da CPLP e, então, a CPLP está bem representado naquela parte do mundo.
Bom, eu gostaria de agradecer a presença dos embaixadores de Angola, Brasil, Cabo Verde, Moçambique, Portugal e Timor-Leste neste debate riquíssimo que tivemos aqui nas Nações Unidas para marcar o aniversário de 50 anos da Revolução dos Cravos, um movimento que teve um impacto significativo na libertação de antigas colônias portuguesas.
Obrigada a todos. Um agradecimento especial ao secretário-geral da ONU, António Guterres, por ter participado neste debate, mas também um agradecimento a todos aqueles que fizeram deste evento possível. Em nome da ONU News, as melhores saudações aqui de Nova Iorque.
We are so excited to be here today, all of us sharks and dragons and lions, and so humbled to be invited by the United Nations to learn about the Sustainable Development Goals and how we can contribute.
Look at this. Wow. For the first time, I'm meeting sharks from other countries, and they have their version of Shark Tank, which is insane to think about, but now it really brings it home that it's a global impact.
Yeah. What you may not know is there are 50 versions of Shark Tank around the world, and some of them are called Dragon's Den and Lion's Den. Since the United Nations is about the global community, this is the perfect opportunity for sharks, lions, and dragons to come together for a global mission.
Welcome to the United Nations. We're here in the General Assembly Hall, which is the place where its membership meets. There are 193 member states who gather here. I think what's important here are really monumental things have happened. The Sustainable Development Goals were signed here in this hall in 2015. And we call the SDGs our blueprint for a better world. And it was just incredibly amazing to see the entire membership of the UN representing the whole world saying that we commit to coming together to make the world more just, more equal, more peaceful. We're also so excited to have leaders in business who know how to change the world.
We're here to learn things that we can implement sustainability to our businesses, and we can influence a lot of people, but also we can actually activate things ourselves with our own companies.
It's really great to have you here for this briefing with my colleagues so that we can delve in a little bit deeper into the issues, especially around sustainable development. Private sector leadership is essential. So you're going to hear from UN experts, and we hope that you'll lead with a better understanding of how the SDGs can be more integral to your decision making.
Making sure that companies are more gender equal can unleash close to $12 trillion in new market value that is linked to the SDGs. That's simply $12 trillion that we're not looking at because women should be at the table, and they're not. The private sector employs 2/3 of the world's wage earning opportunities. Companies can create about 380 million jobs simply by integrating the SDGs into their operations. The right framing can really drive transformation.
I'm going to talk to you today about climate change, and I'm going to give you a lot of bad news. We have entered an entirely new era on the globe. We have changed the world as we know it. Despite all of that, I am an optimist because we know how to solve the climate crisis. We have to change energy systems. We have to revamp transportation. We have to transform farms and food. We have to protect nature. We have to green the economy. We know we have a long way to go. And this is why I'm so glad you're here, because your ideas about how we can get there. What are the types of businesses? What are the types of ideas that we need that are completely going to reframe how the world works?
Since the 1990s to about 2015, the world has gone through the highest rise in standard of living ever in this century. 1 billion people were lifted out of poverty. Rising standards of living were driven by trade and financing, and they were crafted by businesses, by private sector, by entrepreneurs, and by the United Nations. And we would like to think that that's the promise of the SDG agenda.
So I want to thank you again, sharks, dragons, and lions. I hope you got some inspiration here, some knowledge to take away, and we're really looking forward to collaborating with you going forward, and really appreciate your coming to the United Nations and spending this time with us today.
To me, the whole day was a wake-up call. What we learned today is that we have more power than we thought we had to make a difference in business. But now I'm going to choose different products, different businesses.
We need more intent. We can't just think it's going to solve itself. And I think we need to be more aggressive about our intentions on how to create a lot of changes needed yesterday.
It gets you thinking about your kids and their future kids and the world you want to leave behind for them.
The Sustainable Development Goals are a blueprint for a better future for everyone, everywhere. Join me and people all across the globe in taking action. Visit un.org/act now to learn more.
I've always wanted to save the world. It sounds silly, but yes. But I did not think that architecture could be one of the ways that I could do it.
I got into the field with the idea of being a kind of Indiana Jones and just kind of, going into all these really exciting sites. So that was a very naive, immature approach to what heritage might actually be.
And we felt that heritage and sustainability are two sides of the same coin. So we decided to join hands and create a larger impact. Not many architects think that climate change is something that they need to think about, but we're trying to change that. Mud as a material has always been used in construction, and it's a very clean material.
This material is truly magical. In India, it's all about customs and traditions. He walked around the machine with lime and camphor burning in his hand. It's like removing all the bad energies or vibes that machine could have been born with. So that's how Hinduism is, right? You're believed to have born with certain sin, and then you kind of work your way towards a sinless life. You can make mud bricks with basically any kind of mud or soil. So we've got some really beautiful red soil here. This soil is further seeped. All the big particles are kind of taken away. And it's mixed with what used to be sand, but is now quarry dust. So quarry dust is essentially from stone quarries, the waste that you get is collected. And to this mix, you add very little bit of water just to activate the clay, which is then put into the machine, and the strength of the brick is basically got from the action of compression. So what essentially you're doing is you're removing all the air particles from the mix and therefore getting a very, very solid block. So the manufacturing and the processing is done by local communities. So that again, you're giving back to the livelihoods towards local communities rather than large manufacturing plants and large companies. So that's why this material, although it looks like a very normal block, has a much larger reach and a much more positive impact than any other bricks or blocks that I use.
சார் அவங்க கல்யாணத்திலே சிரிக்கல சார்
For whatever reason now you find masons who are mostly male, so the kind of camaraderie you would want to have is a little bit harder to achieve with them, so it's a bit of a social stigma to get too pally with women. So initially they'll be like, no madam, you can't touch the tools, you can't get muddy. But then eventually they're like, there's no point talking to her, she's going to touch the tools, she is going to get muddy. So that's one way that we found it's nice to kind of break that barrier almost immediately. Then we kind of say who defines roles, right? Joy. And working with my hands give me joy, so I'm doing that. And that helps you create a better relationship with the mason. In cow dung, it's basically digested fibers, right? So we add this in mud to increase the cohesion of the mud particles. So we work a lot with cow dung. And it's quite interesting, the cow dung that we get in the cities stink really badly. But the stuff that we work with in the villages are quite pleasant to work with, actually. It's clearly what they're eating. They're eating a lot of crap in the cities and they're eating this lovely grass here, so possibly that. Rosie and I go back a very, very long time. We were roommates in college and did our architecture school together. I think when you find someone, you know that you click, and that's what happened with us. There was, friendship was almost like immediate, and then it's lasted us 16 years. We were very clear that we did not want it to be a Sridevi and Rosie Associates, because the firm needs to be bigger than that.
Anne Joseph, architect. Vasha and John, architect. Tejaswini, architect. Lesha Mahadesha, architect. Sanjani J, architect. Shubha, architect.
And then we thought about the masons on site who really make our dreams, our drawings and all of that a reality. So it was kind of a no-brainer to give them the importance in the name itself. And so masons and the ink would be basically our drawings and all of that.
We wanted it to be a collaborative, hands-on process on site. So, when we stop seeing ourselves as architects who work on just the 2D and 3D, and once it moves off to site, like we barely know what's going on, or we just come in once in a while, but more like working as a team.
So the thread is like just holding it in place, but the notch is doing the bulk of the work. I used to be in Girl Scouts, so I know a thing or two about knots. So we managed to get our poles up, Pomegranate. I started out in the corporate world like a lot of people, and I think after a while I got disillusioned with that kind of a life. I was thinking about moving to the countryside, setting up something like this. So it was on my mind, and we were thinking about it until, a year and a half ago, I lost my husband, the love of my life. He was my college sweetheart. I know adult life only with him. I don't know any other life. So when he died, I knew I had to rebuild life, and I couldn't do it in that city anymore. This place came up. It was almost an impulse buy, and I bought this place. And then I had been talking to the Masons Inc. guys. I think it was important for me. They also knew them. They also knew my husband. They understood my journey. They understood where I was coming from. And somehow that translated into the design. I'm very proud of it because the only cost we incurred in all of this was the metal mesh. The rest was quarry waste, and these are broken bricks, these are broken tiles. So it was all waste.
Fiber in this.
Okay, and just to be clear, I'm not going around shaving my dog. I have groomer friends, and they give me in bags. Dude. He comes when we're mixing mud and things like that. He wants to be part of it.
Yeah.
It sounds so cheesy, but it's a journey of love and pain. And I'd say that this is my dedication to my husband and the love that I had with him. That's what it is.
You see everywhere this concrete building, and there you're losing this uniqueness. Like you see the same building in New York, and you come here and say you can see the same building here.
The mud that is there on site, that seems to have like a secret gold shimmer to it.
It was shining. It was a very sunny day, and then we found a yellow stone also. We thought it's a gold ore, and we got very excited and sent pictures to ma'am. Ma'am was also freaking out, and then that yellow stone was just a stone.
So this whole site right now, what we're doing is we have different experiments going on such that it'll all add to the main structure. So it's a technique of mud that we use. We put mud into these bags, and then we tamp them down. It becomes like a large format brick. It's like masonry. So you have two bricks, and then you place this on top, and then you do layers like this. The durability of mud against water and make it better in compressive strength by adding lime to it. In return not affect its breathable properties or the properties that make it so awesome in terms of air regulation, temperature regulation. So that's why lime is a good alternative for cement. When you have a very thin crack in a cement wall and water enters it, starts building somewhere, and it shows up years later as dampness. Whereas the same thing on a mud wall, when water hits it, after some time it dries out because it allows the passage of air. It still continues to breathe even when it's on a wall. Another really great thing about lime is that it absorbs CO2, so it behaves like a plant.
Mud and lime are like the co-stars, lime being more of the diva, I'd say. It's insect repellent, so lime wash is also used to kind of paint the woodwork that we use to repel termites and things like that.
You need to give it its time, and you need to understand it. People don't understand it, and then it starts behaving differently, and then there's like, oh, mud buildings don't last, or mud buildings can't withstand the rain. But actually it's the lack of understanding or the poor understanding of it that makes it behave in certain ways that is not really the fault of the material but of the way you're using it. For us, it's obvious that, climate change directly affects the shelter that you're going to live in. It's a lot about the buildings, the flooding, the earthquakes. It's a lot about the buildings, and you need to start building resilient structures.
The two main culprits are cement and steel. So these two industries are very, very carbon heavy. They are manufactured using raw materials at high temperatures, and there are plants, situated all across the country. And so the embodied energy in making the material itself is quite high. and then to transport it from factory to the dealer to then to the site. A lot of thought these days are going into organic food. There is a shift to, say, organic clothes as well. But organic homes and the health impacts that it has is something that hasn't been studied sufficiently.
So when we look at traditional systems, one of the key elements that were very often used was natural materials like mud, stone, bamboo, etc. Usually when you work with construction materials, you start feeling sick because you need a mask, you need things to protect yourself because it's harmful for you. Whereas mud is the exact opposite, it's good for you. People buy clay and put it on their faces and things like that. So working with it is healing in itself. Trying to bring on more women masons onto the construction sites.
The workers from the village, they turned up here. The first day they were just, they were just women from the village and I was just a woman from the city, and there was that disconnect. But as we got to know each other and I started appreciating them for the knowledge they brought in, and they started appreciating me for, I don't know, I think my intention, I don't know, or we bonded. I genuinely care for them and I think they care for me.
ಇದು ಎಲ್ಲ ಗಂಡಸರು ಮಾಡೋ ಕೆಲಸ, ಆದರೆ ನಾವು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಹೆಂಗಸರು ಮಾತ್ರ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು. ಇದು ನಿಮಗೆ ಹೆಂಗೆ ಕಾಣುತ್ತೆ? ಇದು
ಪರವಾಗಿಲ್ಲ, ಗಂಡಸರು ಕಾಣ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗೇ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಲ್ಲ ಮೇಡಮ್.
ನೀವು ನಿಮ್ಮನ್ನ ಮೇಸ್ತ್ರಿ ಅಂತ ಎನ್ಸ್ಕೋತೀರಾ? ನೀವು ಮೇಸ್ತ್ರಿನ ಇವಾಗ?
ಮೇಡಮ್ ಇನ್ನು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿದ್ಮೇಕ ಗಾರೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಅಂದ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ ಮೇಸ್ತ್ರಿನೇ. ಇನ್ನು ನೀವು ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಟ್ಟಾಗ ನಾವು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ತಾನೇ ನಮ್ಮನ್ನು ಮೇಸ್ತ್ರಿ ಅಂತ ನೀವು ಕರೆಯೋದು. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಮೇಸ್ತ್ರಿನೇ.
Yes. It took me such a long time just to get them to understand that we don't want men on the side because it's the concept that we're trying out. It's all women. We want to try this out to see if it works. They kept saying, oh, once we start the main construction, then we'll get the men here. So I told them, okay, we will start the work, and if there's any task that you cannot do, you come and tell me, I cannot do this, a man can do this and I can't, and we'll get a man on site. And they took that as a challenge.
I think the minute you start talking about issues related to gender, it automatically becomes like a you versus me kind of thing, which it really isn't. We're just saying that there are issues that we are feeling in the profession, and we need support to change that. Let's employ more women in our architecture firms. Let's have more women on construction sites. Let's look at their security aspects. Let's look at the issues that stop them from being around. I think we're clearly past that age where someone says, no to you in a certain way, but of course, there are cultural angles that come in, or social angles that come in, that there is a silent no that stops you. But the idea is to question that and to get more people to fight that with us.
My family on the outside are like very forward-thinking people, very modern Indians. I have a brother, so they believe in bringing both kids up with equal opportunities. But I wouldn't blame them. They are from a different generation, so they still have the very traditional ideas of the role of a woman. Having said that, my parents are like my biggest support. They've funded my entire education. They continue to support everything that I do, that Mason Singh does. They finally accepted that, I think, but they're still really worried that I'm a single woman at 35, unmarried and way past her expiry date. For architects, a lot is about who you're servicing and who your clients are. And we were really lucky to find someone like Thomas who was, had the same kind of frame of mind. It's always really lovely to come back here, as you can feel the vibe and the energy is very different. And it's almost as a philosophy, right? When you use materials that are kind, even the space kind of reflects that.
From a construction perspective, I would say that we have almost 100% stuck to sustainable practices. Two factors. One is lowest possible cost, and lowest possible impact on our environment. If you look at the wood that we have used, all of them are recycled. I don't think a single tree was cut in the construction of this house.
We started our firm in 2013, so we were quite young into the profession, and I think it was a leap of faith from your end to go with two young girls who knew just about enough to build a house, I think.
Now we are a fully certified organic farm.
Lovely, okay.
Growing aromatic and medicinal plants.
It's interesting to know that both the global north and south have similar things that we can work on, which is not common understanding. People think that we're very different. And every year we have very clear goals on how to be more inclusive and how to bring the idea of cultural heritage and the importance of it in climate action to the forefront.
What is really exciting is that people more and more are seeing the importance of integration of culture and not just looking at culture as an aesthetic overlay, rather kind of integrating that into policy and seeing that culture can definitely be used as a tool to mitigate climate change and an effective tool to mitigate climate change.
It's tempting to say I'm going to get rid of my pain by going on a shopping spree, and I did it. It didn't help. We can shut ourselves off and harden ourselves, but there's a beauty to keeping it all open, and the earth inspires that. And I would definitely tell people to try it. It may sound challenging, try it at some small level. You will see that it's healing, and take the plunge.
As women, people are not really expecting you to move mountains. So when you do move a mountain, it does create a buzz. So the fact that there's no expectation is great, and you can do what you want.
To all the women who are watching, no matter where you are and no matter what your profession is, no matter if you're at home, I think in the whole view of climate action and being more responsible, I think the idea is to just each of us to do our own little part, to keep going. And I'd love to see more women here next time, and more women architects and more women everywhere. The future is female. He's still posing.
Yeah.
To mark International Women's Day, I invited my advisory board on gender equality to share their hopes for women and girls around the world, and to reflect upon the ways we can harness their full potential.
My hope is for everyone, woman or man, girl or boy, to do more for gender equality in any little way they can, whether in our work at the United Nations or at home.
Gender equality is the best chance we have at a better world. That is why investing in women and girls now with urgency and commitment is our only hope for a better tomorrow for people and planet.
On this day, my hope is for women around the world to have equal access to education, healthcare, employment, technology, and to be able to pursue their dreams without fear or barrier.
When we include others, we bring the best out of all of us. When we exclude others, we lose out on their talents, their gifts, and all that they have to offer. The world cannot afford to lose out on what women and girls, in all their diversity, have to offer.
My hope is that the many creative, resilient, and strong women I've met all around the world will bring change. But it needs us all, women and men, in order to implement the Strong Women's Rights Convention. More inclusivity will also mean a more peaceful world.
To be recognized for their meaningful and active role in the society. We are investing in building stronger and resilient societies by providing equal access to quality education for all women and girls as a driving basis to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals.
My hope for women is welcoming, inclusive workplaces with allies of all genders. My hope is for more women in STEM careers, in management positions and leadership tables throughout society.
Through meaningful and safe participation in decision-making, women and girls of diverse backgrounds will lead their communities, countries, and the world towards sustainable, human rights-based solutions to the multifaceted crises we urgently need to address.
My hope is that women and girls around the world have access to quality education, are empowered, and allowed to pursue their dreams without facing any kind of discrimination and gender barriers.
My hope is that as a result of the 68th session of the Commission of the Status of Women, we can agree on concrete commitments to invest in all women, adolescents, and girls, to strengthen their voice, their agency, their leadership that will allow them to break the cycle of intergenerational poverty.
I hope for women and girls around the world to be valued and respected equally for who they are, what they represent, and for all their potential. And not only on this day, but always and everywhere.
My hope is that gender is no longer an impediment for women and girls to achieve their dreams.
My hope on this International Women's Day is that we, once and for all, get serious about closing the gender financing gap. Prioritizing investments in women and girls is a human rights imperative and necessary to build truly inclusive and prosperous societies.
Let us remain steadfast in our commitment to gender equality, not just on International Women's Day, but as an enduring pledge to building a fairer world for the generations to come.
I hope we can harness the potential of the Sustainable Development Goals to create a more just, inclusive, equitable society where women and girls can reach their full potential and live in peace.
Together, let us fill the gaps and invest in solutions. Because when women and girls win, everyone wins and society wins.
احنا لما انقصف بيتنا وجينا بعجوبه، جينا على المدارس كانت المدرسه مليانه، لقينا بيت الدرج، هذا بيت الدرج اللي احنا قاعدين فيه، مطر علينا والوساخه اللي من الدرج والامراض كلها انتشرت اجت على اولادنا، بنتي صار معاها الكبد الوبائي، يعني انعدمت عندنا سبل الحياه شمال غزه، يعني حاجات انك تشبع الصغار فيها تلبي حاجاتهم مش موجوده.
انا بصحى من النوم بقول يا ماما بدي خبز احشيها مع نسبه اشي، بتقول لي والله فيش، تعطيني 3 شيكل اجيب فيها حلويات بشتريهم بشبعش.
احنا طلعنا دارنا مكشوفه معناش ولا مليم، طب من وين نروح في الاطفال هذول؟ يعني بنسكتهم يعني يا بشكل فلافل كوبايه ميه بضلهم بعيطوا على خبزه.
كان يشرب ابني حليب ياخذ كذا وجبه في الايام العاديه من غير حرب، لحتى لان ابني لا طايل بحليب ولا طايل شيء، يعني بنت زي هذه ايش ذنبها عشان يصير فيها المرض؟ وهذا الولد صار بطل يمشي الولد الصغير، وهذول ايتام كمان.
انا نفسي ارجع بيتي وناكل ونشرب زي زمان ونضلنا بامان.
احنا لما نزحنا من مكاننا الاصلي انا كنت في الثامن، وكيف كان جراينا والشظايا فوقينا والصواريخ. اجاني وجع، كنت في الليل وما فيش لا اسعاف ولا مستشفى ولا اي عياده قريبه مثلا منا، وبحمد الله كانت يعني الممرضه سهير معروف موجوده في المدرسه، وهي والله اجتني ولدتني ودارت بالها والله علي كثير، يعني انا بشكرها والله كثير.
المدارس اللي أنا كنت أولد فيها كانت تتعرض لقصف. حالات الولاد اللي أنا كنت أولدهم كانت على الكشاف. اللي ما كنتش أعطي أي مهدئات للحالة. غرز للحالة كنت أعملها من غير بنج. الأطفال اللي أنا ولدتهم كانوا الوزن قليل بالنسبة للعمر، ناتج عن سوء التغذية اللي الأم مرت فيه. أنا أكتر إشي بتمنى أفتح عيني يقولوا الحرب انتهت وكل الناس ترجع على دورها ويتم إعمار قطاع غزة وأحضن أولادي وأربيهم وأعلمهم أحسن تعليم.
I'm at a school. This was a school in Kharkiv, Ukraine. For children here in Ukraine, or for those in Gaza or in Sudan or Yemen, childhood is being shattered. But not just by the drones and the bombs, but by a sense of dread. So many children and young people tell me they no longer have dreams. This matters. Enduring 2 years of war in Ukraine matters. Shattered classrooms matter. A life hiding underground matters. Because when war robs children of the chance to dream, it denies them a vital part of their emotional well-being. A part that in later life would help them navigate the complexities of life with optimism. For children trying to survive in a war zone, dreams of tomorrow are just replaced by the nightmare that is today. Living in peace should not be a luxury. It is a fundamental right. It's the sound of such threat all around Ukraine, but particularly here, just a few kilometres from the Russian border. You see the look in people. They've been through occupation, they are going through such bombardments that these sirens are, well, they're a warning, but they're a very, very real threat. And so people crunch through the snow, old people, mums carrying children, and down to bunkers and basements, darkness and cold. They go. Safety, physical safety. But all this comes at a cost. It comes at a psychological cost. The psychological scars from this war, from the shelter, from the having to constantly seek safety, they're very real. And they deepen every day that this war goes on, that these attacks go on.
Jacaranda simkhethe ngalokuthi kusihlahla lesila Swatini singesisihlahla semvelo isihlahla lesihlanyelwa edolobheni and then isihlahla lesibanga sivumela ukuthi thina singasisebenzisa ngoba asisiso lesi bangafuni ukuthi sijujwe sesinono. Mina Anton Agostino Myanga ngibuya eMozambique la sengine more than 35 years. Ngiqale kwenda umsebenzi wami una 12 years sengiqala kubala ngibuye ngalaso ngiqhubeka nalokubala iminyakeni leyiphelile bengifundisa nje abantwana laba aba-overseas abanganabani lapha eSalvation ngizama ukuthi ngibafundisa khona kanjalo ukuthi laba bebangisupporta ngaloko madlana ukuthi ngangibafundisa ibangini futhi lo nanku kumele ukuthi ngikwake ngokuqedza nga 2 days ngoba ngiqala ngithatha sigodo njengoba nisibona si-round ngiqala ngisilungise sibe plan into khona lokuthi ngidesigner lento lengiyifuna ukuthi ngifunani emva kwaloko ke sengiyadesigner ngiyalungisa kube flat kube sengiyadesigner kube sengiyaqhuba ngiyakha nje kube kanje kusho ukuthi 2 days solo ngakha lo less 3 singaqedzi. Ngingasho ukuthi ngikwakha sometimes i-process yalo munye umuntu mhlawumbe uqhamuka ne-designer yakhe afika anginikede noma sithombe afika anginika athi ufuna lo njengaloko kwakhula msweni ufike nale design wathi angidesigner athi ufuna into le njengalo bese nginini thatha sigodo ngihlala phansi ngiyaqabanga ukuthi kodwa le into ngayenda kanjani bese ngiyayenda bese siyiphumele nje.
أنا سمية أبو العز illustrator and fashion designer. I started fashion career بطريقة مختلفة شوية. I wanted to put my illustrations على usable products. So I started by teaching people fabric painting, so to learn about how to make their own style on their own clothes, and also recycle their own clothes and to use it in daily basis life. في الأصل أنا painter فكنت بعمل illustrations دي بس يعني بتتعلق وبعدين I started my fashion career وقررت إن أنا أعمل line مش بس الحاجات الcustomized إن أنا أعمل حاجة ready to wear so people can use it and to have it in ready to wear. أول حاجة ابتدينا بيها إن إحنا كنا بنعلم الناس يستغلوا اللبس القديم ويستخدموه بطريقة جديدة. وبعدين لما ابتدينا اللاين بتاع ready to wear كنا مركزين ان احنا ساعات نستخدم مثلا ethical fabrics، ساعات بنستخدم مثلا pure silk من اخميم عشان برضو يبقى فيه حاجات more affordable to people. فبنشتغل مع ورش فيها استخدام الايد اكتر، فده بيكون بيقلل البولوشن شويه. والباكجينج بتاعنا برضو بنستخدمه recycled paper و even the printing هو بنطبع ب sustainable print. I think as a solo entrepreneur, woman entrepreneur, we need a lot of help in marketing and how to run our business like in a very professional way. So the planning is a very important thing. I think a lot of artists or designers like it's not in their mind to do something like this. So mentoring in that part is very important. Also, giving opportunity like what G-Techs are giving us today to be part of Egypt Fashion Week as a good exposure and a new clientele. So that thing is very beneficial for us. Also to contact with each other and know other designers from other countries and how we can help each other. So I think that's the part mentors can help us in.
Bangladesh has been blessed with 100,000 square kilometers of arable land and favorable weather.
That's why we have been choosing agriculture as our prime profession for centuries. However, making a living out of agriculture is challenging because of its poor profitability and low respect. Many farmers decided to give up, just like my family did. And if this continues, we will be experiencing immense challenge in terms of food security and economic prosperity. Hi, My name is Mashur. I am the co-founder of iPage. I have always been fascinated by the agriculture ecosystem and seeing what farmers must go through to earn a better living for their family. We have founded iPage to make a real change into that scenario. We started iPage, an agricultural information tech company, to give farmers the access to ecosystem with actionable data at the right time so that they can make informed decisions and earn a profitable return in their agricultural practices. What do you need for this to happen? Innovation, information, and technology. Artificial intelligence and precision technologies can empower farmers to make informed decisions at the right time with the right partner for a better earning. iPage offers soil taste-based digital advisory and connects with small farmers with ecosystem actors such as banking institutions, market players, input sellers. We aim to capture 5% of Bangladesh's smallholder farmers market by 2025 while contributing not only to the food security of the country but also ensuring a brighter and sustainable future.
এই যাবতে আমরা যেভাবে আবাদ করছি তাতে আমরা খুব একটা উন্নত হতে পারি না। এখন আইপিএসের মাধ্যমে আমরা মাটিকে পরীক্ষা নিরীক্ষা করে কতটুকু কোন জমিতে সার দিতে হয় বা কীটনাশক দিতে হয় সেটা আমরা বুঝতে পেরেছি।
My journey is beyond agriculture. It is a heartfelt promise to uplift lives and sow the seeds of real change.
In every disaster, every crisis, children are the most vulnerable. They face the highest violence, exploitation, disease, and neglect. Children didn't cause conflict, but they are powerless to stop them. Children didn't cause displacement, but they are forced to flee by the millions. Children are facing crises which they had no part in making. From the state of Palestine to Haiti, children's rights are being violated on a daily basis. We must act now. Today's appeal for humanitarian action for children is critical more than ever. We don't have enough resources to reach children in need. We urgently need your support. We learned from the response to COVID-19 and other emergencies. When there is a will, there is a way. So, what do we need today? UNICEF and local partners must have the right support so every child living through an emergency has life-saving aid and protection. We need timely, flexible, and multi-funding so UNICEF can be prepared to deliver for children quickly and efficiently. We need world leaders to ensure children are protected according to the requirements of the international law, and they must push for accountability where children's rights are being violated. We must rise to the challenge. We cannot forget the children who need us the most, whether in DRC, Haiti, Myanmar, and Gaza. UNICEF are providing life-saving aid and protection for children and in emergencies. But you can support by donating today.
ايش اسمك؟
ندى.
قديش عمرك؟
13.
من وين؟
من غزة.
من غزة. وين احنا ساكنين هلقيت ندى؟ ورجي.
احنا هنا، هاي بيتنا وهذا المكان اللي بنجلي فيه وبنعمل كل اشي فيه، وهي هان بننشر وبنعمل، وهي حمامنا، وهي خيمتنا. احنا هان بننام، وهي اكلنا يلي بنصف عليه كل يوم دور الساعة 11 معاده، وهي هان احنا بننام. بصحى اول شيء بنصحى من النوم بغسل وجهي بروح ماما بتقول لي روح عبي مية، بروح بعبي مية وباجي ساعة ساعتين عادي، نص ساعة زي هيك. طبعا يعني مش راح اسيبهم يعني يضلهم بدون مية، فبروح بعبي لهم وبرجع. من ما حطت الياسين بعدين ماما بتحكي لي روح اشتري مثلا فطور، بروح بشتري وباجي وبنعمل وبنقعد. أنا تامنة، كنت عادي بروح على المدرسة، بطلع لما بدي، يعني بروح مع ماما بساعدها عادي، يعني بعمل كل إشي. سلمان أخويا استشهد، صاحباتي نور وليان ورتال كنا نعمل كل إشي، نطلع ونيجي ونروح عادي، نرجع قريب على البيت
Push to the limit. Live-in domestic workers call for more rights. Hope on the horizon. Will offshore natural gas finally bring prosperity to Senegal? And a school on the street. How some of India's poorest kids are getting an education. Low or even no pay, no breaks, no rights. 50 million people worldwide live in modern slavery. 22 million of them are trapped in forced marriages. The International Labour Organization says numbers are rising sharply. Modern slavery takes place in almost every country in the world, with women, children, and migrants especially affected.
Jamilette cares for an elderly couple. She helps them with computer issues, prepares the meals, and does the cleaning. She used to be a live-in domestic worker, working round the clock for low pay. We domestic workers think working as a live-in is a form of modern slavery. Carolina was a psychologist in her home country. In Spain, she's had 8 years and 7 different jobs as a live-in domestic. You leave your life, it no longer exists because you have to be there for this person 24/7. Soledad Lucero Tuapanta, a psychotherapist, worked as a live-in carer before quitting. Many are sexually exploited. If you're a live-in worker, they think they can just grab your butt. These women are just 3 of 40,000. That's roughly how many women work as live-in domestic workers in Spain, a country where women are proud of their ability to combine family and career. But should this freedom be at the cost of women from other countries? Women from countries where life is hard and insecure. In her first job as a domestic worker 25 years ago, Soledad Lucero Tuapanta was suddenly confronted with her suitcase at the door. Her employers had moved. Here on the Galician coast, she often thinks of her son back in Ecuador, who grew up without her. She has just one photo from that time. She only planned to stay in Spain for a short while. It never occurred to me that I wouldn't return. I was devastated that I had left my 7-month-old son to look after another woman's baby. Her son, Diego Quevedo, is now 24. He wants to become an engineer. He lives in Quito, the capital of Ecuador. The country has widespread poverty and unemployment, and many live in fear of the drug cartels. In Latin America, it's often young women who go to Europe to keep their families afloat. Diego Quevedo is on his way to his father's. He was a baby when his mother left, too young to understand. That's just how it was. We got through it without any major problems. And today, she's no stranger, but we don't have a very close relationship. Diego had a twin who died shortly after birth. When his mother left, his grandma stepped in. Diego's parents' relationship didn't last long, and his mother's plan to send money didn't work out. We live in third world countries, so people seek the American dream or their fortune in Europe. They emigrate to improve their situation. But many have no idea how difficult it is to start somewhere else. Soledad Lucero Tuapanta decided to stay in Spain. Phone calls helped her maintain contact with Diego. It's small talk. They mostly chat about Diego's future plans, about his exams at university. Although she's really proud of her son, Soledad Lucero Tuapanta feels great guilt for leaving him. She paid a high price for her life in Europe. Diego Quevedo even tried living in Spain for 6 months, but he felt uncomfortable in his mother's new family. His home is Ecuador. Carolina and Jamilet's home was once Nicaragua. They even lived in the same city, but they only met in Madrid, bonded by their mutual suffering as live-in domestic workers. Carolina hoped to earn money as a freelancer in Spain and return after 2 years, but her dreams were dashed. Fortunately, her husband and 2 children, now grown up, followed her, but her life was dominated by the elderly people she cared for. Sometimes it felt as if the day would never end. Old people often don't go to bed very early. They stay awake until 1 or 2 o'clock. One lady I looked after spent ages watching terrible programs, and I had to stay with her. Things were better in her last job, Carolina admits, but nonetheless she no longer wants to be on call for strangers 24/7. Her friend Jamilet now only works part-time. She dedicates herself to helping women like Carolina, undocumented migrants who often find their sole way of earning money is as live-in domestic workers. According to the Aliens Act, you have to stay here for 3 years. Only then do you get the documents that grant you the right to a proper employment contract. This is Carolina's situation. Right now, though, she's flying home to Nicaragua. Her sister has died. Heavy with grief, she hopes to find solace with her family back home. I'm leaving because I need to find myself again. I'm missing something that I have there, and I need to finally feel that I have an identity again. I don't have that in Spain at the moment. Soledad Lucero Tuapanta has set up an association that advises migrant women. She believes women in Spain are dependent on live-in domestic workers for their own emancipation. Domestic workers play a key role in the care system. Without them, many working women would not be able to go to work. They can only do so because we Latin American women are there. At an event in Madrid, they discussed the working conditions of live-in domestic workers. Soledad Lucero Tuapanta and her colleagues say that regulations have improved, but politicians are still not doing enough for them. They want equal rights for all, every day.
Despite its climate targets, Europe is still buying large quantities of gas on the world market. Liquefied natural gas is in especially high demand. In 2023, almost 50% of Europe's LNG came from the US, but tankers could soon be arriving from West Africa too.
The sea here is both a source of concern and of opportunity. Fishers in San Luis now struggle to make a living, but there's hope on the horizon. Huge gas deposits have been found off the coast near the border with Mauritania. On a clear day, you can see the new drilling platform. Many people here still depend on fishing, but stocks are dwindling thanks to competition from China and Europe's large fishing fleets. Until recently, Papa Isalsal also worked as a fisher, But with his small boat, his catch was not big enough. Along with some of his colleagues, he is now trained as an industrial diver, hoping for work on the platform. Gas extraction is the most important opportunity we have. We feel confident. We've been told we'll be able to work there as soon as the platform is operational. But BP wants to train us further. Papa Issa Sall serves as a role model for many here. Until the new job on the platform works out, he's had to find a new source of income. He set up a compact kitchen garden in the backyard of his uncle's school. It's now a burgeoning small business. Even as a child, I liked to grow things. Since fishing is no longer profitable for me, I try to make a living from aloe vera and bananas. Until a better job comes, I'll get by somehow. I definitely want to stay in my country. The small garden is an oasis of hope. Papa Issa Sall's uncle is Mamadou Sene. The former fisherman turned imam runs a Quran school. He is proud of his nephew, also because he's an inspiration to local children. Both men dearly want the next generation to have a secure future. They believe the gas platform offers great potential. We were very happy when we heard that gas has been found here. Fishing no longer feeds us. My nephew is doing the right thing. He's doing everything he can. The gas project has given us new hope. We can hardly wait until the plant goes into operation. We pray that the government will ensure that we benefit from it. Senegal's energy policy is a balancing act. Despite continuing to invest in fossil fuels like the gas rig, the country has also set climate targets. The gas project is seen as a bridge towards modernizing Senegal, in which renewable energies will also play a key role. This solar farm near the capital Dakar was completed in 2019. It was co-financed by Germany. This plant from our state-owned energy company Senelec is currently the largest in the country. Senegal wants to increase its share of renewable energy to 40% by 2030, and so enable a fair transition towards climate neutrality. But solar plants alone are not enough. What's missing is storage capacity and grids. The income generated from the drilled gas is set to help finance these. Senegal's Ministry of Energy is organizing seminars for journalists to raise awareness about climate-neutral energy sources. The aim is to get the population excited about shifting to renewables. The government says it doesn't want foreign bodies instructing it how to implement its transition. We use the word fair in this context. We want to promote renewable energy. But it's not normal for the international community to talk us into it. You can't ask countries that now have the opportunity to extract oil and gas deposits not to do so. The contribution of African countries, especially Senegal, to climate pollution is very small. Senegal's first priority is to make sure that the entire population gets access to electricity within the next 2 years. Up to now, more than half of households here have gone without. The Sall family, for example, still cooks with coal. The money to develop the grid will come from gas exports. Many countries are interested in the gas from Senegal, including Germany. Pirogues still dominate the scene at Saint Louis. Every boat that returns is greeted by the whole community, and its often meager catch is inspected. Papa Issa Sall comes too. Sometimes he's overcome with sadness about the loss of his own boat. Then he puts on his oilskin and helps his friends unload. I hope the government keeps its promises and gives us hope for the future. Our country needs investment. It's very sad, but we can no longer survive as fishermen. Senegal has the chance to create a fair energy transition and invest in a clean future. People here hope that they too will experience benefits from gas exports without corruption getting in the way.
On September 7th, 2010, a seemingly small incident in the middle of the East China Sea changed the course of history. A Chinese fishing trawler and two Japanese Coast Guard ships collided in the disputed waters. The Japanese Coast Guard detained the skipper. Tensions between the two countries had been rising all year, and the Chinese government was far from happy. It cancelled high-level political meetings with Japanese officials, and it reportedly reduced exports of crucial rare earth elements to Japan.
China has denied this has happened, and it's unclear by how much they reduced their exports. But what is clear is that this small event marked the start of an incredible price surge and a worldwide frenzy to secure these rare earth elements. Arguably the most important of them being this, neodymium. Neodymium is hidden all the way down here in the periodic system.
It's one of the 17 rare earth elements, which are actually not that rare at all. These metals were first considered rare because they'd never been seen before. But rare earths like neodymium are quite abundant in the Earth's crust. It's just very hard to separate them from the material around them. When it was discovered in 1885 by this Austrian scientist, nobody really knew what to do with it. From the 1920s onwards, it was used to colour glass purple. But in 1983, researchers from General Motors and the Japanese conglomerate Sumitomo independently announced a huge invention at the same conference. If you combine neodymium together with boron and iron, you get really, really strong magnets.
Wow.
Today, neodymium itself is also used in special protective glass and for lasers, among other things, but the magnet is what turned out to be a game changer. Neodymium magnets can be up to 10 times stronger than ferrite magnets.
Normally, the magnetization of iron breaks up into lots of little domains pointing in different directions.
This is Michael Coey, a professor who has been researching magnets for over 50 years.
We don't want that to happen, to have a good, usable permanent magnet. We want them all to be in the same direction. And the way you do that is alloying the iron with another element, which is neodymium, which is the best one for this purpose.
That makes these neodymium magnets crucial for things like electric cars, wind turbines, or even your phone.
The invention of neodymium magnets paved the road for more efficient electric motors. They're more compact and lighter because these magnets are so powerful that even comparatively small ones get the job done. Today, many electric cars contain an average of about 1 kilogram of neodymium magnets. Wind turbines use much, much more, up to half a ton per turbine.
This is why demand for neodymium is only projected to grow and could outstrip supply. But let's rewind back to that boat incident for a minute.
It wasn't just Japan that panicked a little when they realised how dependent they had become on rare earths mined in China.
The price of neodymium shot up dramatically after the collision.
It's all born out of this fear from the concentration that you raised in the 2010s with China.
This is Michelle Bustamante. She looks at critical minerals and their impacts on land and natural resources.
I have seen the concerns around these types of materials lead a lot of countries to become more resource nationalist and isolationist and want to mine all of our own stuff and only produce everything domestically.
Australia, where neodymium is relatively abundant, has scaled up its production significantly. The US reopened its one rare earth mine in 2017. Myanmar has scaled up its mining, but exports a lot of its rare earths to China. India wants to quadruple its domestic production in the coming decade, but scaling up neodymium production is still far from easy.
The problem is getting this element out of the earth.
Neodymium is found jumbled together with other similar rare earth elements. Purifying it takes a lot of steps. That process uses many acids and solvents that are detrimental to the environment and hazardous to workers. Not only that,
one of the unique challenges associated with rare earth mining often is that they're mixed up. A lot of the ore is mixed up with highly radioactive elements.
That's why even 10 years after the rare earth crisis, China is still the main producer of these elements. And neodymium, along with other rare earth elements, has been a hot topic during recent trade tensions. And prices are starting to surge again. The problem is that these neodymium magnets are so great that it's really hard to replace them.
Now, people have tried to find other ones, other combinations of iron with different rare earths, and some of them have been somewhat successful, but nothing as good as neodymium. All these details about the metallurgy are much, much trickier.
What does work, though, is using less of it, more efficiently, for example, in electric motors.
We found that, yes, you could actually replace 50% of neodymium with ferrite magnet without compromising in performance.
This is Ikenna Nelebedim. He's a chemist developing new methods to recycle and substitute neodymium magnets.
So, it's a matter of alternatives and substitution, but not entire replacement.
Recycling always seems like the most obvious solution, but we're in the very early stages still.
But since the wind turbine and electric car markets are also expected to keep on growing, it could incentivize more recycling.
I can tell you that we are making very good progress. Our approach is to recover these rare earth elements in an environmentally friendly way using a process we call the acid-free dissolution process.
With this method, there's no need to pre-sort and separate out the rare earth magnets one by one. Instead of toxic acids, the process uses copper salt and selectively leaches out the rare earths.
And these are examples of rare earth elements that we recovered from this.
What would make it even easier is if manufacturers built their products with recycling in mind.
When we create truly sustainable supply chains that involve a high degree of reuse, recycling, that's when we're really going to solve the problems that create all of this fear. Not just by trying to mine everything ourselves as individual nations.
So it's unlikely that this obscure element is going out of fashion anytime soon.
Lessons are about to get underway at this street school in India's capital.
Namaste, namaste, namaste. Magar school daily jaoge? Oh, very good, sabas.
Tan Singh teaches more than 80 children in the middle of a parking lot in New Delhi. The police officer launched the project 8 years ago. His aim is to provide children from poor backgrounds with free access to education.
Oh, very good.
I wanted to teach children who have very limited opportunities in life. It is important for me to set a good example for society. I understand these children's lives. My family also comes from a very poor background. Today, the children are learning their times tables. 12 times 8 is 96, as Vikas well knows. Many of the kids here were unable to read, write, or do arithmetic. Tan Singh and 4 other teachers have taught them all this. The children are hugely motivated. They know the school offers them the opportunity of a brighter future. My parents are too poor to afford school fees, a uniform, and books. Without this school, I'd have no chance of an education. I want to be a police officer one day, just like Tan Singh. This is only possible because we have such great teachers. They teach us so much. All the pupils receive a free lunch, donated by a nearby temple. For many, it's the only hot meal of the day. The school is funded by donations. They pay the teachers' salaries, including that of 20-year-old student Ankita Sharma. She's enthusiastic about the project and the children's desire to learn. The pupils are so eager to learn. They want me to teach them everything I know. They have big dreams and really want to make something of their lives. The learning experience goes beyond books. Together with their teachers, the children also devise plays about social issues. In this play, Nelo urges her classmates to stay away from drugs. Many children from poorer districts come into contact with them at an early age. Tan Singh believes it's important to make sure they are aware of the dangers. In the beginning, there were some children who were addicted to chewing tobacco. That's why we put on this play, to draw attention to the fact that drugs are very dangerous, that you can quickly become addicted and even slip into crime. Rickshaw drivers like Mohammed Kamran also help with the project. They take the children to and from school free of charge, even though the drivers hardly earn any money themselves. I couldn't go to school, so I'm happy when I see the children going. I hope they don't have to drive a rickshaw later on. Tan Singh also hopes that the children will be able to lead better lives than their parents, that education will allow them to escape poverty and be able to get a well-paid job.
Good.
I hope that they will become judges, doctors, or policemen, for example, anything they have in mind. I hope they understand the importance of education, because that alone would have a huge impact on their future. Tan Singh says he'd be happy even if his work just saved one child from the streets.
We are here receiving 600,000 doses of routine vaccination. Very, very critical for the life and the well-being of children. UNICEF and our partners are trying to do everything possible that we can do to protect and save the lives of the innocent children that have been already displaced by the ongoing war in Gaza. Today, the situation in Gaza is unimaginably stressful for children. We do not want to see children who survive the bombing to die because they are not vaccinated.
قررت إني أستحضر زي الحكواتي مرة أخرى وأعيد بنائه عن طريق إني ذهبت لأسواق البالة الموجودة بدير البلح. قدرت إني أحصل بعض الأقمشة وصنعت هذا الزي. خلال فترة الحرب لا أقدر أنفذ هيك أنشطة مع الأطفال. أنا أحد من النازحين، وأحد هدول النازحين اللي تركوا كتير أشياء بالبيت، ومن ضمنهم الزي اللي كنت بلبسه أثناء أنشطتي. اليوم الأطفال بحاجة ماسة لهيك أنشطة. بصراحة بلاقي قديش الأطفال بيكونوا سعداء إنه موجود عندنا الحكوات، أجا عندنا علاء الدين، علي بابا.
شفنا شخصية الحكواتي إنه بحكي لنا قصص حلوة جدا لدرجة صرت يعني متعلقة فيكم. وهدول القصة اللي أعطاني إياها مع عمو محمد يعني حفظتهم وحفظت أهلي كمان عشان إيش يخلفوني إياهم قبل النوم.
بدك الطيبة بدك الطيبة هذا الولد مو اسود اسود يا عيني هي ايدك شايفة كيف محلاها يلا هي ايدك
احنا كنا 5 كنت بقلب الدار كنت ألعب مع اخواتي على الطاولة بابا كان يعمل نار عشان ماما تعمل أكل كانت تعمل مكرونة ولو قصف الدار اللي جنبينا بعديها اجت علي حديدة وقع علي نار وكانت ايديا مقطوعة لحديت الهان بابا نزل سيارة وركبنا اللي هو قصف الجامع اللي الشارع اللي هي وقعت كمان علي خبطة هيها برجلي هنا بنفس ارجع لإيد رجلي واروح العب مع الازرق
كنت قاعد بطعم البط والدجاج فجأة الاقي في دار قبالنا نزل عليها برميل ما حسيتش بوجع انا لما صحيت طلعت على رجلي لقيتها رايحة خجلت كيف بدي اروح المدرسة كيف بدي ارجع اجري كيف بدي العب مع اصحابي بخجل انا من صحابي
Oh, I cannot put into words exactly how you will feel when you enter a jail. And when you go inside, you see them. They are packed like sardines inside these cells. It's really not humane. It goes down to the basic level of these people, whether they're convicted or not, they are still human beings. You cannot stop treating them like human beings.
I sleep in a dormitory, 200 people in one line. The dormitory is crowded. It's very uncomfortable for us. I was constantly having insomnia.
The average is 300% overcrowding, but in some facilities it goes to 1,000%. So there are 10 times more people than what are supposed to be in that specific facility.
This living condition of PDL is important while they are staying here inside. This will affect their behavior, this will affect their development while in our custody. Because I will just borrow these thoughts from Fyodor Dostoevsky that the degree of civilization can be judged by entering its prison.
The very basic human needs that should be available to anyone outside jail, it's an entirely different world inside the jail. It's like you're no longer human.
Because of the previous insurgency that happened in Marawi, the old jail was destroyed. The new facility is now built. Rules will be followed. One of the most important aspects is the human rights. So what you should find outside of this jail facility should also be here. The only thing that the PDL should be deprived of is their liberty. You will see that this facility has enough space, living space that they should have, and then they have access to education, access to library.
These are not the real ills. We can provide medicines, we can provide doctors, but people will still keep on being admitted into jail. So the root cause of the problem is not that. That is not the problem. That's just one of the effects.
It is not about building infrastructure. It's really about changing the system, having less people incarcerated for minor offenses, having people also released more quickly, having alternatives to incarcerations, so using a system for treatment or rehabilitation, using the health system for people who use drugs and maybe are not connected with trafficking or these different type of crimes. For a very small quantity of methamphetamines that maybe worth, I don't know, $5 on the market, you're putting somebody in jail for up to 12 years You can see how, from an economic point of view, that doesn't make any sense. On the other hand, you're taking away resources from addressing the syndicate or the organized criminal group that are really profiting from this.
I have to go and visit the female jails because I want to see how they are being treated. And you know, every single time I cry seeing how they are. These are mothers, these are daughters, these are wives who are there, and I relate to them. I try to tell them, do not lose hope, because there are people outside who are going to try to make things better for you.
I have 4 kids, and I miss the most is the quality time of my kids when I am there with them outside.
UNODC brings to the Philippine government the expertise or the experience of other countries. It has been, I think, very significant in supporting the Philippine government and prison reform.
We have a series of meetings with the judges in Marawi City, and they committed to put a court here. So expediting the hearing of the cases will mean that cases will be solved faster, and then release will also become faster.
One day, my Lord will reward me for my deeds. Even not in this jail, even outside when I get released.
When I get out here, I want to start a new life with my kids, and I want to go back to my work.
Siyempre, ako masaya ako. Pero marami pa rin mas may edad sa akin na nakakulong pa rin dyan. 75, 76. Okay lang po. Kasi dito, lugar namin ito eh.
That experience of encountering Toto was very heartwarming, but at the same time also heartbreaking, because here you have a 70-year-old Filipino released from prison. Although he is free, he is alone. But that's not the end of the story. I think the end of the story should be that he lives the rest of his life peacefully and comfortably.
Welcome to UN Insider. I'm Elaine Reyes at the United Nations headquarters in New York.
Development is about addressing poverty because this is one of the greatest drivers right now of progress and recovery.
Climate change is already a reality in today's world. It affects the entire planet.
Diplomats are working to find solutions for some of the biggest global challenges, from armed conflicts to the climate crisis and efforts to eliminate poverty and ensure equality.
We can't allow anybody to fall behind in education. This is the future of our societies, so we need to understand how to invest better.
We need to strengthen and renew global peace and security frameworks to deal with the complexities of today's multipolar world.
The UN is calling for increased international cooperation to stimulate growth and accelerate progress toward the Sustainable Development Goals. How important are the different perspectives when it comes to trying to solve major conflicts?
It's extremely important because conflicts are not unidimensional.
Thanks for being a UN Insider.
I came all the way to Osaki to create a future where all resources circulate and where mining of additional fossil fuels is reduced. Osaki town has achieved a recycling rate of more than 80%, which is the highest through Japan. In Osaki town, waste is sorted into 27 different categories. Since there is no incineration plant, only these blue bags goes directly to the landfill without getting incinerated, and other 26 categories will be sorted and recycled properly.
もうね、長いことやってたら、もう自分たちはもうそのままで、もうそれこそ当たり前と思ってしてるから、別にあれありませんね。
Of course, there are some waste that cannot be recycled properly without incineration. However, I think waste management should not be designed with an incineration plant included from the beginning.
私たちの町自体はそのゴミを燃やすとかそういった焼却炉というのをもともと持たない町であります。そしてまたこれからも焼却炉を作るとか持つとかそういったことを全く考えていない町でありますので、もうずっとそのゴミの分別を続けていく、そんな感じの町なんです。
Collected recyclable waste comes to this place called the Soa Recycling Center. Citizens will sort into 27 categories at their homes, but this center will further separate it into more than 40 categories. And plastics will be separated into hard types and packages and then compressed. And cans will be separated into aluminiums and steels with this separation machine. Composite materials such as pans, because they have a plastic handle, they are cracked by hammers and will be separated by hands. The compressed waste will then be taken to recycling factories all over the country. The profits from trading recyclable waste are used as a scholarship of students from Osaki. Food wastes are collected 3 times a week with this blue bucket. When the food wastes are brought here, they get crushed into smaller pieces. Prune plants will also be brought in here and they will be crushed together. And they are mixed together with the food waste. The prune plants also contains many native microorganisms. As they get active by decomposing the food waste, the waste turns into a rich compost. The steam is rising from the pile because the microorganisms are very active. The pile will be left to rest for another couple of months until the decomposing process of microorganisms ends completely. The whole process will take about 5 to 6 months. Almost all the compost is used at farms in Osaki. And rape flowers are grown at those farms to make a rape seed oil. The whole process of decomposing food waste doesn't need chemicals or any other substances, but just rely on the native microorganisms. I think the process is very simple and can be practiced anywhere in the world. Actually, this process has been introduced to Indonesia through the JICA partnership program. Osaki town officials and the recycling center staff went to Indonesia to show the techniques of separating and composting food waste. This may become a solution to waste management issues that a lot of developing nations faces right now. Even if we try to recycle everything, there are still many packages that cannot be sorted well. So currently I'm working with companies to create recyclable products. What would you think if somebody told you that your hometown will disappear in decades due to climate change? I grew up in a small island, Tuvalu, in the South Pacific. There I experienced a life very close to nature and community. I went back to Tuvalu when I was in high school and realized that the country is suffering from the rising sea levels and extreme drought due to climate change. And I cannot express such a feeling when I knew that my hometown and my old playground will disappear in near future. One day, your hometown and even this Osaki town may become a habitable place. I myself don't want to experience such an unhappy future. Nor do I want my children or the generations after to experience that. The pine forest spreading by the leech of Osaki town is a vast windbreak with a total length of 24 kilometers. Hundreds of years ago, our ancestors planted these trees to protect the town from heavy winds and sands from the ocean. But they did this for the future generation rather than for themselves, because they knew that the trees would take hundreds of years to grow. And now I feel like it is my turn, and I came here to create a circular economy that leads to mitigation of climate change for the future generations.
The Summit of the Future is designed for the leaders of the world to take a look at the whole global architecture, at how we do international cooperation, and to make it better. The most important ingredient is trust. The summit is going to adopt 3 agreements: a pact for the future, a global digital compact, and a declaration on future generations. The Pact for the Future has 5 chapters on sustainable development, peace and security, youth and future generations, science and technology, and transforming global governance. You look at the UN and you think governments are the key players, and that's true, they're the ones sitting around the table, but they do so on behalf of their people. Civil society actors, young people have been involved throughout and will be at the summit. Private sector will be here in recognition of the massive role they have in shaping people's lives and opportunities today. This summit is for and by everyone, and everyone should see themselves reflected in it. The summit is not just 4 days in September. Most of the seeds that we plant at this summit will take some time to grow and flourish, and all of us have to be involved in holding governments responsible for living up to their commitments on the international stage. It's going to take all of us to make this summit a success.
كنا قبل الحرب نتعامل مع 12 حالة كحد أقصى. حالياً ما يقارب 40 حالة عناية. اضطرينا نفتح عنايات تانية في مستشفى ناصر القديم، عناية أطفال في مستشفى التحرير. حالات بصراحة حالات صعبة جداً، حالات حرجة، إصابات كتير منها بتكون في الدماغ، في الصدر، سهولة جداً بصير معهم حرارة. حتى المرضى اللي أولها بدخلوا على حالات متوسطة الأمور بتسوء معهم بسرعة، بدخلوا حرارة والتهابات ما بعد الإصابات. يعني الجانب للأسف جانب مظلم جدا بنعانيه هنا في قطاع غزة، وخصوصا في القطاع الطبي. نحاول قد ما نقدر نوصل الرعاية الطبية لأكبر قدر ممكن. لما تمتل العنايات بصير عندنا مبدأ الأولويات، نشوف الحالة الأكثر خطورة إنه ندخلها عنايات. أحياناً بنضطر إنه إحنا نطلع حالات من العناية ولسه ما استكملتش علاجها، نظراً لأنه ما عندناش أسرة. عندنا نقص في كل الإمكانيات. يعني الأدوية المخدرة أحياناً بنعاني فيها، الأدوية المسكنة مش دايماً متوفرة، المضادات الحيوية بنضطر نحط مضاد حيوي بديل، ممكن ما يكون موجود البديل. بالإضافة كمان إنه مريض عناية بيحتاج تغذية. هذه مشكلة التغذية مشكلة عامة في قطاع غزة كله، خصوصاً للمرضى. نحتاج إنه إحنا نغذيهم، ما فيش برضو أكل.
بتذكر انه كان بيتنا واسع وكان إلي غرفة لحالي وكنا يعني مرتاحين. فجأة صارت الحرب. احنا قاعدين في ميز، فكرنا انه احنا حنقعد اسبوع اشي زي هيك، فاخوات الشباب بيناموا هين واحنا بننام في الميز، بس بننام على الارض يعني ما فيش فرشات. بالعادة إخواتي ما بتغطوش، كتير بارد، كتير بارد هنا بالذات بالليل لما إحنا نروح ننام، برد بصير. لما رحنا نروح على الحمام بالعادة ما بنلاقيش مية، ما بنلاقي مية، بنضطر نستنى لحد ما تيجي. بعدين كتير زحمة، يعني ساعتين ثلاثة بنقعد عشان نروح إحنا على الحمام. يعني مش قادرة أتعايش معاهم هين، فاهم علي؟ من كتر ما خلص أنا بدي أروح، بس بدي أروح على بيتي، بدي أروح على صحباتي اللي بحبهم، خالاتي، بنات خالاتي، يعني عن جد اشتقت لهم، وبدنا نرجع لحياتنا سلام، وبدنا نرجع لحياتنا الطبيعية. إحنا بنعيش هين، ما بنعيش يعني حياتنا، بدناش نضلنا كل شوي حرب، لا خلص بدنا نوقف إطلاق دائم للنار، بدنا نعيش حياتنا يعني زي أطفال العالم.
Living walls, Singapore's green facades help turn the heat down. Exploited workforce, raids on Brazil's coffee plantations. And trouble brewing, how climate change is impacting the cultivation of our favourite cup.
Coffee, the world's second most consumed beverage, and so ingrained in our lives that it's made it into pop culture.
I want to get some coffee. You want some coffee?
Drink a lot of coffee before I go to sleep so I can dream fast.
I always have coffee when I watch Radar. You know that.
This is, excuse me, a damn fine cup of coffee.
But your morning cappuccino might not be guaranteed. Climate change is threatening coffee production. Drought, rising temperatures, and irregular rainfall are ruining coffee harvests. Some studies say the amount of suitable land for coffee production could shrink by half by 2050.
Without investment in basic farm productivity, yeah, we're in trouble. We're in serious trouble.
As the movie Airplane warned,
Are you telling us absolutely everything?
Not exactly. We're also out of coffee.
Brazil, Vietnam, and Colombia are the top 3 producers of raw coffee bean. Biggest importers? The US, Germany, and France. Today, people drink over 2 billion cups of coffee worldwide every day. Consumption has almost doubled over the past 3 decades alone. Southeast Asia is expected to have nearly double the global growth rate as westernizing tastes and a rising middle class increase demand. And let's not forget China. Starbucks plans to open a coffee shop every 9 hours so it can reach 9,000 locations across the country by 2025, which means we need to be growing a lot more coffee. But climate instability is already taking a huge toll on production. In 2021, a severe frost in Brazil's coffee region of Minas Gerais wiped out vast swathes of coffee trees. Coffee prices surged nearly 13%. Regeneration of the crops and ecosystem will take years, meaning the losses will continue. Such irregular temperatures also make the plants more vulnerable to pests and disease.
For the last 15 years, a rust epidemic, coffee leaf rust, arrived in strong force across Central and South America.
This is Dr. Vern Long. She's CEO of World Coffee Research, a research nonprofit funded by the industry.
In Central America alone, 1.7 million people lost work during that period. So there are human consequences to the challenges.
Part of the problem is that coffee plants are finicky. They go through a delicate flowering phase, and it takes 4 years for a single coffee tree to get a first harvest. Another problem is that out of 120 so species of coffee, we only drink 2 of them, Arabica and Robusta. Arabica is the higher end stuff that has all those subtle flavor notes we love. But as a plant, it needs the temperature between roughly 18 and 21 degrees Celsius, around 30% shade cover, and plenty of consistent rainfall. It's more sensitive to high heat, disease, and produces fewer beans. Over 60% of global production is Arabica. Its sibling, Robusta, is a more resilient plant, but tastes not as great and ends up mostly in stuff like instant coffee. And that's it. We're almost entirely reliant on just 2 varietals. Coffee also has a small gene pool, and at least 60% of wild coffee species are at risk of extinction. This makes our current supply extremely vulnerable.
Coffee research is so behind relative to what other commodities have. We can do so much with traditional technologies, just taking pollen from one plant, putting it on another, creating a seed of something new, collecting data at a global scale. And it's not rocket science. It's very straightforward what needs to happen.
Thankfully, there's some good news.
So there are new varieties coming up, and there are some hybrids that are spread by seed.
Nuria Torreira Garcia is an ethnobotanist who's worked in Central America, Vietnam, and Uganda.
So there is a future in that kind of variety because it's perhaps more accessible to farmers and easier to distribute.
Starbucks recently announced it had developed 6 new varieties of coffee seeds, including hybrids that resist leaf rust and generate higher yield in a shorter period of time. This is big news considering the chain buys about 3% of all the world's coffee from 400,000 farmers across 30 countries. A few researchers are also trying to fish species out of the wild. Coffea stenophila, for instance, is making a splash. It's a rare and threatened species from West Africa that tolerates much warmer temperatures and actually tastes comparable to Arabica. While the varietal has commercial potential, bringing wild species into production can only exist on a niche scale and will take decades. The bigger problem is that at least 80% of the world's coffee is produced by smallholder farmers. They generally work on a few hectares of land and don't have the resources to buy hybrid seedlings, which are roughly 40 to 160% more expensive than a traditional variety.
That's why it's also important to have a diversified farming system and not only having coffee, but also trees or other kind of crops in order to have a safety net.
Given how hard it is to adapt in our current conditions, the future of coffee could look more different than we think, as in, your coffee could start coming from some unexpected places. Experts say that countries like China and Australia have ramped up coffee bean production in recent years and could become bigger players in the future. But for now, our coffee addictions aren't going anywhere anytime soon, and the industry's strategy to keep its pipeline is
technology. We are really focused on the technology, needs. I would say in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll see a flush of new varieties.
This will require work from scientists, governments, and everyone in the supply chain. But as consumers, the best we can do is pay attention to sourcing. The coffee supply chain often lacks transparency as it's bad for business. So what we can do is work with smaller suppliers who give more information on the origins and production conditions of their coffee beans.
They must have been here just minutes ago. Marcelo Campos goes from one row of coffee bushes to the next. Where are the women who work here?
They were just here. We want to find them and talk to them to understand the situation.
We're accompanying inspectors from the Ministry of Labour, the Public Prosecutor's Office and Federal Police to coffee plantations in the Brazilian state of Minas Gerais. They want to track down day labourers believed to be working under slave-like conditions. The inspectors have discovered 2 women hiding in the bushes. They've been working unpaid for over a month, without any protective clothing, food, water or access to a toilet. The workers are afraid of the officials, but it's their employers that the authorities are looking to punish.
Just over 100 years ago, workers here were slaves, objects, commodities. A country with a history of 300 years of slavery has a patriarchal culture that neither values nor respects workers' rights.
The team is investigating anonymous reports. Things are fraught and Marcelo Campos needs to keep a level head.
We're accompanied by the federal police because what we're doing can cause a lot of problems for the plantation owners, and in some cases, they might react violently.
At first glance, the next target looks like a sawmill, but there's a coffee plantation here. The team soon find what they're looking for. This man is working without protective clothing, and far from earning money, his debts are mounting.
I have to pay for any tools I use. There's no way out. I have to work to pay debts that just pile up. They make slaves out of us. I work and pay to do so. I don't earn any money to buy food for home. It's bad.
João doesn't have a contract either. He works 12 hours without a break, he says. The men sleep here on flimsy makeshift beds. There are no closets for their few possessions, no privacy. The owner of the farm is not on site, only the foreman. He now has 1 week to respond. He has to let the men go, and he'll have to pay the maximum rate for the work they've done. The foreman defends himself. The men wanted work, and they got it.
I don't see any slave labor. Do you? Why don't you go to their house and see what it looks like?
Marcelo Campos says that's a typical response. Brazil is the largest coffee exporter in the world, and coffee is one of the most popular hot drinks in the world. Few people ask themselves if it's harvested in fair conditions. Inhumane working conditions are not only found on coffee plantations. Last March, inspectors freed 85 workers from a farm in southern Brazil. They were hired by a subcontractor producing seeds for German company BASF. One of them is 15-year-old Eduardo Sotero. He was seriously injured on the job and had to wait for help for hours, he says. It was his mother who took him to a hospital. One of his toes is now paralyzed.
We should have had proper shoes, a place to eat, protection from the sun.
In 40-degree temperatures, workers could only rest on the bare ground. Some were fainting from a lack of water. Those who were off sick received no pay.
When we heard that BASF was behind the seed production, we were shocked, because a company of this size should take an interest in the workers employed by its subcontractors.
BASF condemns the human rights violations, but says there had been no evidence of them. It also says there was no direct contractual relationship with the workers, and says its subcontractors sign agreements obliging them to respect human rights in their supply chains. It voluntarily paid out €1,670,000 in compensation to the workers and for social projects, and intends to increase monitoring in the future. However, for us as a company, it writes, working with more than 90,000 direct suppliers and a correspondingly large number of indirect suppliers in complex supply chains, complete and permanent monitoring is unfortunately not feasible. Back on the coffee plantations in Minas Gerais, the team of investigators faces numerous obstacles in its work. Farmers are often alerted by cell phone in advance. They know inspectors are coming.
The owner says there are no workers here. We don't believe him, and we'll take a look.
Their instincts were right. Workers have just been picking coffee cherries here.
The water is still cold. The workers were just here.
Suddenly we see someone. The man stops reluctantly, claiming he was just out for a walk. But then 2 more workers are discovered. Does she know the man over there? Does he work with her? Yes, she says. He was here this morning. There's no food, no toilet, no protective clothing. Marcelo Campos shows us a poisonous snake that the workers just killed in the coffee bushes. The workers are more afraid of angering the boss than snakes.
If I had complained about working conditions in a court of law, I'd never work on a farm here again. My name would be tarnished. It would be as though I was a thief, or worse.
The team is satisfied with the day's work. The mentality of the plantation owners has to change, they say. Penalising them is the only solution.
Climate change is a global issue, and one that will only be solved if we all work together. Nonetheless, when it comes to cutting pollutants, China is a key focus. It's responsible for around a third of global CO2 emissions. And despite pledging to be climate neutral by 2060, it's still investing in coal. How does it all add up?
Solar panels as far as the eye can see. Here in the desert in the northern part of Inner Mongolia, China is building one of the world's largest solar power plants. Our interview request is accepted, which doesn't happen often in this country. We even get a special tour with various representatives from the local government. An official shows us what's already been completed and what is still to come.
We'll have completed construction of 8 gigawatts of capacity by the end of 2025, bringing the total to 9.
The area is expected to increase 5-fold in the next 2 years. Around 28% of electricity generation in China comes from solar, wind, and hydropower. The country is aiming to be climate neutral by 2060. So it's all the more surprising that there's currently increased investment in coal. Capacities are being expanded and new coal-fired power plants are being approved. A few hours' drive from the new solar plant, we're at one of the largest open coal mines in Asia. Production is reaching record highs. Tons of dirty coal are transported around the region in these red trucks. Here in China's biggest coal-producing province, a new mine is being developed. Underground mining is being digitized, with less personnel and improved occupational safety. That's what this miner tells us. He doesn't want to be recognized for safety reasons. He's been working in mines since he was 15.
I stay because I have no choice. So far, I don't have any better options. That applies to most of us.
There are a few alternatives around here. Apart from coal mining, the only industry is agriculture. Now that coal mining is ramping up, the local economy is doing well. Stores have opened up, residents tell us. Restaurants are also benefiting.
My business is doing well. Now there are coal mines operating here. There's more business. There's a lot of people passing through. Many of the people who work in the mine aren't from the area. They come from other places.
In its heyday, coal mining made Inner Mongolia prosperous. In Ordos, for example, the city government commissioned the development of a lavish centre a number of years ago. With a population of 1.4 billion, China is hungry for energy. Coal is inextricably linked to its decades of economic growth. But China had been reducing coal production. Today, coal still accounts for 63% of electricity generation. But now, as this map compiled by an energy research institute shows, new projects are planned all over the country, even in places where there is already a lot of coal production. Ma Jun is probably China's best-known environmentalist. Although coal power can support the integration of renewable energy into the power mix, he advises restraint with all the new projects and backs innovation in renewables.
And because there are other ways to try to help better integrate those into our power grid. One of that, obviously, energy storage, and the other is about all these different regional power grids. We can better coordinate those.
In the last 2 years, state media has reported energy shortages in some parts of the country. The fact that this is a consequence of man-made climate change is usually ignored. Hydropower plants have been hard hit by drought. For China, energy security and independence are the top priorities, and it sees coal as the least complicated option.
Protecting energy security is always our most important task. We will strengthen fossil fuels as security and backup. Coal will play an essential role.
But there are structural challenges. The regional electricity grids are not sufficiently interconnected. Many parts of the country now want coal to ensure energy security, and there's the lack of storage capacity for renewable energies. Ma Jun is worried about excessive coal capacities.
Now we have to find our innovative ways to try to deal with this problem. Otherwise, not just carbon emission will go up, our local emission will go up, and that will have an impact on the air quality, which matters to the public health.
For this miner, coal is both a curse and a blessing. It creates jobs, but it also has its risks.
Because I had a few accidents in the mines, I no longer wanted to work in the industry. Then I tried to start my own business, but it didn't work out.
During our tour of the mega solar park, we learned that the energy generated here has so far remained in Inner Mongolia. Further transmission possibilities are being explored. Clearly, there are still major challenges ahead if China is to make good on its commitment to a cleaner future.
Our cities are becoming ever hotter, and the lack of respite can make life unbearable. If we keep pumping CO2 into the atmosphere at the current rate, urban temperatures could rise by up to 4.4 degrees Celsius by 2100.
Air conditioning units are ubiquitous in Singapore to help cope with the hot and humid climate. But these appliances are part of the problem because they contribute to rising temperatures. Lu Yijun Yolanda studies architecture and sustainable design. With the help of a thermal imaging camera, she's identified a vicious circle.
It will release more heat to the urban environment. It will increase the higher urban heat island effect. So it's not good for the urban environment.
What further exacerbates the situation in Singapore is the rapid growth that's underway. There are more and more residents and more concrete. In recent years, temperatures in Singapore have risen twice as fast as in the rest of the world. Veto has lived here for years. But dealing with the heat every day is challenging even for him.
You can see, right? When you saw me when I'm walking in, I'm still a little bit perspiring here. It's actually 11 o'clock in the morning. It's overcast and the humidity is picking up.
Veto is an architect and botanist, affectionately known as the plant whisperer. His weapon against climate change is as simple as it is effective: vertical green spaces on the walls of buildings.
You can feel when I'm standing here, just close by, right, I can feel this heat reduce significantly because the plants are respiring and photosynthesizing. When the plants photosynthesize, they release oxygen, and they're actually basically taking away my carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. So when you have got that biochemistry going around in the city, you'll realize the CO2 level drops, the immediate heat actually drops, and that makes a big difference.
30 different plant species are growing on this wall. A sophisticated irrigation system provides the necessary nutrients. Workers trim the greenery twice a month. In the long term, it even has financial advantages.
Your air conditioning cost inside is actually cheaper and lower. So that's cost you're saving as well. So spending a few dollars to save a few $1,000s is actually a very good business.
Lu Yijun Yolanda shows us another building that illustrates what a difference greenery can make. This facade is partly covered in plants. The other surfaces, steel and concrete, are completely exposed to the sun. The difference in temperature is a whopping 5 degrees Celsius. But Singapore can't combat rising temperatures with greenery alone. It's also promoting sustainable buildings and allowing more spaces in between them. The new university, for example, has solar cells on its roof, helping ensure net zero emissions. Professor Veto teaches here. He shows us how a simple ceiling fan is enough to keep students cool. It's all very open plan, allowing a gentle breeze throughout the premises.
The building is actually very similar if you go into a forest. There's some trees, some buildings which are very tall, some trees which are very tall and different layers as well. So trying to bring back forest architecture into cityscapes is very important to try and involve designs of the future as well. So nature-based solutions are part and parcel of that.
And it looks spectacular too. This hotel in the center of Singapore has won awards. It lives and breathes with flourishing green terraces and gardens. Singapore subsidizes sustainable architecture and is pursuing ambitious long-term goals. 1 million new trees are to be planted by 2030. And the plan is to have so many parks that no one will have to walk more than 10 minutes to be surrounded by nature. This project is called Cooling Singapore. The researchers have programmed a digital twin of the city. This allows them to simulate how temperatures can be lowered with individual projects. A thermal image showing today's daily temperatures in Singapore is shown on the left. On the right, what it would look like if all buildings were energy efficient and sustainable. The whole city would be 1 to 2 degrees cooler. Singapore sees itself as a driving force for Southeast Asia in the fight against rising temperatures and is investing billions. Unlike other developing countries, however, the wealthy city-state can afford to do so.
In every disaster, every crisis, children are the most vulnerable. They face the highest violence, exploitation, disease, and neglect. Children didn't cause conflict, but they are powerless to stop them. Children didn't cause displacement, but they are forced to flee by the millions. Children are facing a crisis which they had no part in making. From the state of Palestine to Haiti, children's rights are being violated on a daily basis. We must act now. Today's appeal for humanitarian action for children is critical more than ever. We don't have enough resources to reach children in need. We urgently need your support. We learned from the response to COVID-19 and other emergencies. When there is a will, there is a way. So, what do we need today? UNICEF and local partners must have the right support so every child living through an emergency has life-saving aid and protection. We need timely, flexible, and multi-funding so UNICEF can be prepared to deliver for children quickly and efficiently. We need world leaders to ensure children are protected according to the requirements of the international law, and they must push for accountability where children's rights are being violated. We must rise to the challenge. We cannot forget the children who need us the most, whether in DRC, Haiti, Myanmar, and Gaza. UNICEF are providing life-saving aid and protection for children and in emergencies. But you can support by donating today.
Chaque instant, il y a tiré, il épais, pour me battre en balle. Et des parfois, il ouvre gaz dans la cour l'école là. C'est pour les élèves qui ont couru. Il épais, pour me battre en gaz, pour les élèves qui battent en gaz tout. Sa te tre mal pou mwen. Paske, mwen ka bezwen bwè d'lo, mwen pa ka soti. Pipi ka kembe mwen bezwen soti, mwen pa ka. Telman bal ap tobe nan la kou l'ekol la. Sa m sot viv la, e pa nepot si moun ki ka viv li. Mba vle ke si nepot si moun ki pou viv. Quand ti moun nan l'âge 11 ans, pa supposé dwe a viv bagay kon sa. Il ta supposé chaque jour pour aller à l'école, pour le suivre.
It's raining heavily now in Gaza. Colleagues tell me it's hard to tell the difference between the bombardments and the thunder. This is the nightmare we feared the most, the spread of waterborne disease. There are now more than 100,000 cases of diarrhea for Gaza's children, more than 150,000 cases of acute respiratory infection for civilians. Stormwater and disease are flowing through the makeshift homes people have been forced to build in the open. Whichever way you look at it, for the children of Gaza, death rains down from the skies. And the darkest irony? Nobody has enough drinking water. Children are thirsty, mothers cannot prepare food, and showers run dry. At what point is enough enough?
Whether it's baskets in South Sudan or goals in India, sometimes sports are more than just a game. Saudi Arabia has pledged to reach carbon neutrality by 2060, so why is it still investing in oil? And when will supplies of the fossil fuel run out?
In 1956, a geoscientist for Shell and professor at Stanford projected that global oil production would peak around the year 2000. This came as a huge shock at a time when oil was driving more and more of the economy. Some people thought it would mean a global financial crisis, and others, a full-on apocalypse. Since then, predictions about peak oil have popped up again and again. Supply problems were supposed to start in 2011, with effects noticeable by 2015. There was talk of high prices for food and fuel, supposed to impact agriculture and electricity. But none of this ever happened. The supply problems that everyone freaked out about never came. So what did happen? And should we be worried about running out of oil? First, looking at this question now is completely different from decades ago, because there have been huge changes in our lives. In the early 2000s, we weren't really thinking about life without fossil fuels. Electric vehicles were nearly unheard of. So an end of our oil supplies seemed like an existential crisis for the planet. With growing awareness of climate change, renewables have taken off, and the amount of them in the mix has grown hugely. It's now cheaper to generate electricity from solar and wind than from fossil fuels. There's also way more attention on electric vehicles. 14% of new vehicles sold globally in 2022 were electric, compared to just 5% in 2020. Even the United States and China, two huge polluters, are making hefty investments into green technology. And something pretty special happened in 2023.
When we're looking at renewables investment, which clearly has been growing rapidly, and in 2022 met that from fossil fuel, and 2023 far exceeded it.
Mike Coffin used to work for BP and now researches how markets align with climate policy.
And clearly that gap is only set to widen.
While not much would move without fossil fuels, and oil in particular, the future of renewables is looking brighter and brighter. And that has made the end of oil take on a whole new meaning.
If you go back to, say, about 15 to 20 years back, there was a concern that oil supply is going to peak. We're going to run out of oil.
Atul Arya is an engineer and Standard & Poor's chief energy strategist.
Now the concern is somewhat different, which is that we're going to hit a peak or a plateau in demand.
This is a really huge shift. In October 2023, the International Energy Agency published a report predicting the end of oil and other fossil fuels. Only this time, the end is a peak in demand, not supply, and it's predicted to come in 2030. High demand and low supply means a high price. Low demand and high supply means a low price. Oil executives around the world were up in arms over the report. Because less demand with the same amount of supply would mean falling prices for fossil fuels and less profit for the industry. This is a big deal since demand for oil has been growing every year except 2020 when COVID hit. This wouldn't mean that we wouldn't use fossil fuels anymore, rather that it would become much harder to justify new fossil fuel projects. Because our supply of fossil fuels is doing great.
We're not running out of oil and probably not going to run out of oil. Based on the current reserves, we have about 40 years of oil.
And that doesn't even count all the new planned projects. This is mostly thanks to a newish technology called hydraulic fracturing or fracking. Fracking is a process that involves injecting a slushy of water and chemicals into rock, creating tons of tiny cracks. This allows oil and gas to escape and be collected at the surface. The wastewater is then often injected deep underground, which can contaminate the local environment and cause earthquakes. Fracking took off in the United States in the early 2000s, and the country now produces more oil per year than any other nation in the world. So much that it's affecting other countries.
Take Saudi Arabia or UAE or Kuwait, and actually right now, because of so much oversupply in the market, they are producing a lot less than what they can produce.
So on the one hand, we might have an oversupply of oil, and on the other, plateauing demand. Also, investors turning away from fossil fuels. But oil companies are used to expanding, and major oil producers like Shell, Exxon, and Total Energies are all still betting on rising demand.
Data suggested that all companies, I think except maybe BP, were increasing their oil production.
Faye Holder is the lead researcher on a report that investigated oil companies' communication and claims.
Total Energies stated it was It was forecast to spend 25% of its capex for 2022 in renewables and electricity. But when you look at what that includes, it also includes some kind of gas-fired power.
They may seem like they're shifting towards renewables, but they're actually still banking on a fossil fuel future.
The business operations aren't changing particularly or at the pace needed. They're also lobbying against policies that would force that change or bring it about quicker, but at the same time promoting this very public narrative that they are doing all they can.
State-owned oil companies like Russian Rosneft and Saudi Aramco are also betting on future money from fossil fuels, even though projects approved now may never be profitable. New sites take years to build up infrastructure and to get ready for drilling. In financial terms, they might become stranded assets, something that was invested in but became obsolete.
For some countries, 30 to 40% of entire fiscal budget could be at risk as the transition unfolds and oil prices fall. That's going to have a massive impact on the economies of these countries and crucially on living standards for those in these countries.
And that impact could also hit individual citizens directly. Many pension funds around the world are invested in oil and gas. If these companies fail spectacularly, millions of people could be plunged into financial insecurity in their old age. So faced with the end of oil, it seems like investing in renewables is the smart financial decision. They're cheaper, and there's less risk of new projects becoming stranded and unprofitable in the future.
So all of that is going to help us move away from oil, but it's not going to be overnight.
Because according to all predictions, we're going to continue to need fossil fuels for a while. They're used as a backup power when wind and solar aren't running, and widespread nuclear isn't likely to come online in time. Transport and energy storage also need to improve for us to be able to quit them entirely. But the more investment goes in, the more renewables improve. And we desperately need that to keep existing on this planet. But we are on the way. It's no longer a question of if, but when. Instead of being concerned about an end to our oil supply, we should be worried about pumping too much of it. With falling demand and a world shifting to renewables, it's not a smart decision, either financially or for our life on this planet.
The world's largest oil exporter, Saudi Arabia. The kingdom is looking to massively expand its green energy production to help diversify its economy and reduce dependency on oil. It could be a huge step in the world's quest to halt climate change. But is Saudi Arabia really quitting oil? And lucrative position than ever before.
Help me, God.
When South Sudan won independence from Sudan in 2011, the mood was euphoric. But soon, civil war broke out. Political chaos and poverty still dominate life in the small nation. Many young people face a future without prospects, but not all of them.
Time to get ready. First, he packs his sports shoes, then his power bank. He has a long journey ahead. At 5 o'clock in the morning, Hakeem Mayola sets off for training. He doesn't have money for the bus, but his big dream is to become a basketball player. And so he runs for 2 hours in flip-flops from the suburb where he lives to one of South Sudan's few sports grounds in the capital, Juba.
You can't tell your mind you're tired. You tell your mind you're tired, the body will accept it, you're tired. But if you tell your mind I'm not tired, the body will not complain. So you just have to keep on working on your mentality.
There's a high level of ability among the players here, and Hakeem Mayola faces a lot of competition. Youngsters taller than 2 meters are no exception in South Sudan. And there's great commitment too. Even 4-year-olds practice for hours in the blazing heat. Stamina paired with a lot of talent. It's not easy for 13-year-old Hakeem Mayola to stand out from the crowd. Deng Biardang runs the training. He used to play himself in the U.S. It was only in 2011, after South Sudan gained independence, that he returned. The sports center is dedicated to keeping young people from poorer backgrounds off the streets.
This is a good environment for them, you know, to interact, to develop physically, mentally, and also to stay away from trouble.
Juba, the capital city, has high levels of poverty and crime. The parents of most of these kids earn less than $2 a day, so training is free. Many children spend the whole day at the sports ground. Donations in part from abroad mean that the center can also provide lunch. After 3 hours of training, Hakeem and his friends are very hungry. Then it's time to relax on the game's console, featuring their favorite teams from the American NBA, the world's top basketball league. For many here, basketball may be their only way out of South Sudan.
My dream is to play in NBA. After I played in NBA, then I'll play for my national team. Those guys are my hero. Because like they went out last year, they represented us, they played well.
The South Sudan national team competed in the 2023 FIBA World Cup and has also qualified for the 2024 Olympics, 2 firsts for the country. The team is revered in a way its president can only dream of. South Sudan has just 1 basketball stadium. And with the local tournament going on, the only national player still playing in his home country drops by. Kochbar is friendly and approachable. He chats to fans ahead of the upcoming Olympic Games. He knows just how important basketball is to people here. It brings together men and women from the Nua and Dinka ethnic groups who are normally hostile to each other.
Having a lot of disagreement among us politically. We fought among ourselves in 2013 and people divided. So we were trying to look on something that can unite the people. And I think we managed to get this one in sport.
We have a lot of negative things that have been happening to us, been said, but now it's opportunity. We've been given this opportunity to change the narrative, to give the people a different story. And I think it's a big responsibility for us to have.
Kochbar is determined to be an ambassador for South Sudan, representing his country well in the outside world. After a long day of training, Hakeem Mayola stays to watch the games and learn some tactics. South Sudan has a lot of young talent like him. The average age here is 16. The next day is Sunday, a day off. Hakeem spends a few hours at home. He lives with 28 relatives, siblings, cousins, uncles, aunts, and his mother. It's not a family of athletes, and Hakeem's passion has long been a topic of conflict between him and his father.
Remember it, Kim came to me and told me that, "Father, I want to be a football player, a basketball player," and I was absent-minded to him because according to economic of this country, cannot afford him to play football or basketball.
Buying new sneakers is out of the question as they're much too expensive. Jack Mayola would like his son to continue his education.
So if they get something like sponsorships, I will be happy.
Which is why Hakeem and his friends hit the training court in the afternoon. They all dream of a sports scholarship in the U.S. It will be difficult for Hakeem Mayola to stand out against the competition, but he already gets so much from basketball, including a sense of pride, strength, and tenacity.
It's hot and dry, but these kids don't care. They are passionate about playing soccer. The village of Bishapur lies in central India, far away from the big cities, and it's developed into something of a football mecca. Soccer is the first thing I think about when I wake up. My friends are already waiting for me so that we can play. First we practice passes and then we divide into teams and play a match. And this in a country where cricket is the main sport. But Virendra Bega, number 25, is one of Bishapur's young soccer talents. His idols are big international names.
Ronaldo, Messi, Neymar, Mbappe, Bellingham.
The young players hope that soccer will offer them a way out of poverty. The sport has already worked one small miracle here. Around 20 years ago, Bishapur was notorious for the alcohol brewed by local families. And in the middle of it all were the children, who were involved both with the brewing and with the drinking. Back then, even the government promoted it. There were extra licenses for members of the local tribes. I started training the children and told them they wouldn't get any better if they continued drinking. We motivated and encouraged them. At first, just a few kids began training, but more and more have joined. There are now 14 coaches who also train players in the surrounding villages. The region has become known as Mini Brazil. 45 talented players here have made it into the National League, more than from any other region in India. That's helped get sponsors on board. In the beginning, coach Rais Khan put half his salary towards supporting the children. Now there are real houses here. In the past, there were slums. Everyone was very poor. There were hardly any soccer boots or t-shirts. The children borrowed them from each other. We had few resources, but we always saw the talent. Talent like that of Virendra Bega and his friends. They dream of becoming captain of the national team and train twice a day, before and after school. At the weekend, 16-year-old Virendra does his homework in between the training sessions. His parents are happy that conditions here have improved so much. There used to be a lot of alcohol produced here. Now there's normal work and we send the children to school. I want them to learn and develop. Children here are no longer involved in alcohol production. In the past, grandpa types used to drink alcohol. They're no longer around and their kids have started playing soccer. That's distracted them from drinking. Now everyone goes out and plays soccer. Including the girls. They're as crazy about soccer as the boys, and brimming with self-confidence, like 16-year-old Sapna. We're not worse than the boys. It all depends on training. If we train more, we're better. If we train less, we're weaker. You have to decide whether you want to be ahead or behind. But there is one big difference between male and female soccer players in rural India, and it's hard to overcome. If we get really good and then our parents marry us off, it will destroy our dream. I want to train hard and make a career out of soccer instead of getting married. But my mother says getting married is important. I say my sport is important, but if she insists, I will have to do it. Here in Mini Brazil, people have managed to build a life free of alcohol, but breaking away from traditional gender roles may prove a tougher challenge.
where girls and women have equal access to quality STEM education.
I want to see a Nigeria where women are involved in all peace processes.
We want a world where women and girls with disabilities can participate actively in the decision-making processes.
Have to constantly listen to women and to hear what they say, and from there build out the solutions.
Welcome to the SDG Roundtable. My name is Anne Marie, and I'm the Executive Director of the United Nations Office for Partnerships. In today's dialogue, we'll be sharing the results of the first ever We the Women Global Survey as part of our Women Rise for All initiative on women's leadership. We're in the second half of the Sustainable Development Goals. We are facing multiple crises, from conflict to climate crisis and gender inequality. This September, the United Nations will host the Summit of the Future. There is no better time to ask women around the world what are their priorities and expectations from world leaders and themselves to shape the future. I am joined today by Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed, Sima Bahous, the Executive Director of UN Women, and joining us online will be Senja Schulze, Minister of Economic Cooperation and Development of Germany, Gabriella Gay, founder of the Erline Bradshaw Foundation, Angela Polinsky, UN volunteer for the We the Women campaign, and Alice Harding Shackelford, United Nations Resident Coordinator in Honduras. I'd like to first of all say, DSG, thank you so much for convening us. Women from 185 countries responded to our survey. Before we delve deeper into the results, as a champion for women's leadership, why are women's voices so important right now?
Incredible, and thank you for having me, and a big thank you to all those who participated in the survey and really gave us insights that many of those issues were a surprise to some of us. But to go back to your question, Anne-Marie, really the importance of ours is about our agency, it's about our rights, it's about leadership, it's about justice and inclusion. And in all of those issues, you can unpack them and speak to them over years, but they are framed in the SDGs, they are framed in many instruments that we have that protect women's rights. And what we really have to get on with is to implement them. And as I looked at this opening video, I thought what was positive about it was that women were positive about it. And so therefore our leadership, our advocacy, our voice is really important around these issues.
Thank you, DSG. Before we go further, let's hear a message from Minister Schulze from Germany.
Last year, I joined my friends Amina Mohammed and Sima Bahous to launch #WeTheWomen to encourage other women and girls to serve as role models and leaders, to shine a light on women's stories. #WeTheWomen is about our collective commitment to empowering women. It is about our commitment to unlocking the potential of every girl to improve life for herself and her community. #WeTheWomen promotes a culture of sisterhood, celebrating the achievements of women who came before us and reminding us to open the door for the young women who will come after us. And I'm deeply impressed by how many women participate in the #WeTheWomen Global Survey, over 25,000 from 185 countries. 85% of the participants consider themselves to be women's rights advocates. 60% think that women will be better represented in leadership positions in the country within the next decade. And these numbers hold so much power. They show women around the world are calling for change, but they are also ready and willing to act, to fight for equal rights, resources and representation. And that is an inspiring call to action for all of us. And I will continue to work hard together with Amina, Seema, and all my sisters at #WeTheWomen to answer this call to improve women's rights and gender equality. The findings of the survey will be crucial in helping us further refine our German feminist development policy agenda, which I presented last year. It is the cornerstone of our international support of partner countries. And I want to thank Amina Mohamed and Seema Bahous and everyone who supports #WeTheWomen.
Thank you, Minister. And now let's get into the data. The Sustainable Development Goals are our North Star for peace and prosperity. Women responding to the survey put as their top 3 global goals SDG 3 on good health, SDG 4 on quality education, and SDG 16 on peace, justice, and strong institutions. DSG, Executive Director, what does this tell you?
Well, I think those 3 goals did surprise me. I was expecting to see goal 5 in one of them, but I think that is understood as that cross-cutting for everything. But today, these are also the 3 goals that are being rolled back. We don't see the progress that we would like to see with access to health. And in particular, when we talk about from head to toe, it is also mental health, physical health, and within contexts. We don't look at the demographics, so health for a young woman is different for health for older people, and I think we've tended to put the whole in one health system, but we need specificity to that where women are concerned, and young people as well. And education, big, huge revolution happening in the transformation of education. How is the digital world going to come together in this clash of very different ways of imparting knowledge? And I would imagine that that's a big concern for people not to be excluded in this next era of the digital.
Seema, anything to add on anything that surprised you on this?
First of all, thank you very much. And thank you, DSG and Minister Schulze, for your leadership. And what I want to say is that we really need to get a closer look at the survey, because it did have many good takeaways for us on how women feel around the world. And I think 3 big takeaways I took from the survey. One is that women are realistic. They see the problems, they see the challenges, if we want to call them, and they see themselves as part and parcel of putting the solutions together. This is one thing that I take from it. The other thing I take is that women are and remain optimistic. And when women remain optimistic, it means that all these challenges that they have highlighted, the health, the education, even peace and security, also issues of climate, issues of inequalities, issues of unemployment, economic poverty, and so on and so forth, they know that these are surmountable, and they know that they will have a role to play in surmounting these challenges, and they know that they have unique and powerful ways of looking at these challenges and of helping to solve them. And the third thing that I take from this major survey is that women can lead, and they want to lead, and they know that they want to be part and parcel of the decision making. They want to be also part and parcel of accountability on helping all of us solve these problems. So basically, we need to be accountable to those women in helping them realize their dreams, in helping put the SDGs back on track, and in helping local leadership, global leadership of women. We've heard them say that they want to be at the table, they want to be in the decision making, they want to be included, and they are ready to deliver on that.
I love what you just said, and of the women are can and want to lead. And the data showed us that the respondents said 85% consider themselves women's rights advocates, like taking that one step further. For you, what does that say about women's leadership, taking that to the next level, and what is it that we can do more to support women who are ready to take that step?
Women and women organizations want to be and know how they can be their own advocates and the advocates of their own rights and their own drives towards equality worldwide. And basically our role in all this is to be able, as I said earlier, to push forward with them, to push against the pushback that is happening, to push forward for what we believe needs to be done for them, to keep the way open for them. For example, legal issues, they need to be helpful to them, discrimination against them, violence against them. We need to work with these women, with these leaders, to be able to ensure that these women get what they want and are on the path that they want for themselves, their children, their communities, and also their countries and the world.
Thank you so much, Executive Director. And now I'm going to turn to our guests online. First to Angela. Angela, you were one of the more than 400 online UN volunteers that supported the first phase of the We the Women campaign and helped us share the survey widely. First of all, thank you for your help. And we are very excited to hear a little bit more about your experience and why was it important for you to be involved in the We the Women campaign?
Of course. First, thank you so much for this opportunity to work on the campaign and then also to speak in this forum right now. My involvement started upon learning about the We the Women campaign a few months ago, and its mission resonated so deeply with me that I wanted to get involved in absolutely any way that I could. By inviting women from diverse backgrounds to contribute their ideas and perspectives, the campaign not only amplifies their voices, but also fosters a sense of collective ownership over the global challenges that we face. I and the volunteers in my cohort were charged with disseminating the survey to make sure it reached as many women as possible. With over 400 volunteers across the world, the respondent pool was deeply diverse. In my respondent pool alone, participants varied considerably in age, ethnicity, socioeconomic background, education level, marital status, parental status, career level, and other factors. The respondents to the survey were overwhelmingly enthusiastic to participate. They commented to me that they rarely had an opportunity in their day-to-day lives to opine on these macro issues or reflect on their experiences as women. They had opinions, but they didn't know how to share them. They expressed deep gratitude that the United Nations created a platform like this for them to express their worldviews and have their voices heard. This task was deeply rewarding to me and reminded me of the strength of our communities of women to come together and support and advocate for each other. Thank you so much again for this opportunity.
Well, thank you very much. I just wanted to say that's exactly what we wanted to do, was not to have questions where we ticked a box, but after the question, more thought, more dialogue, more conversations, because these are critical issues. These are not your same old issues, but they are in a different context. And so people are really struggling, particularly after COVID, to have that space to really think about this. And so fantastic, thank you.
Thanks so much, Angela. And alongside the survey, one of the ideas that the DSG talked with us about was, again, to delve deeper, that the survey doesn't tell the whole story. And could we start to bring women together intergenerationally? And so we've been holding intergenerational dialogues in countries around the world to discuss some of these key issues a little bit more in depth. Gabrielle, you're an education activist from Barbados, and you recently participated in one of the We the Women intergenerational dialogues to discuss these kinds of challenges women are facing and their priorities for the future. The survey showed that climate change is one of the major concerns. 86% of women say they are affected by climate change or think they will be affected by climate change in the next decade. How does this resonate with you and your work, and how did you find that intergenerational dialogue that was held in Barbados? Gabrielle?
It is such a privilege to be here in this room with such incredible women. In small island developing states, the U.S. Agency for International Development also noted that these climate disruptions over time lead to poverty and migration for women and girls across just and in the near future. But never fear, part of our solution was, our discussion, was the need and the propensity for great solutions and adaptation and mitigation in this regard. So what we really discussed was that combining Sustainable Development Goals number 4, which is quality education for all, and Sustainable Development Goal number 13, which is climate action, we can amalgamate and join education, awareness, and positive climate action for change by things such as climate literacy and climate justice programs that are aimed specifically at women and girls, of which we do also at the Erling Bradshaw Foundation, and projects such as the Caribbean Climate Justice Project and more. And also enhanced dialogue. So, really engaging with segments such as this and having data with surveys such as the We the Women surveys, and then including and partnering with academic and institutions, NGOs, CSOs for increased anecdotal and academic research. And then finally, increased collaboration overall, but then also funding, because the economic disparity must be closed as well to then facilitate increased climate education and climate action initiatives so that we then create intergenerational climate crisis solutions for women and girls, not just now, but for the future.
Gabrielle, that resonates so much with all of us. And Alice, as the UN Resident Coordinator in Honduras, you recently hosted a We the Women intergenerational dialogue in your country. In the survey, in addition to climate change, women identify economic insecurity and gender inequality as major challenges they're facing. How have these issues been addressed in the conversations that you've had in Honduras?
Thank you very much. And from Honduras, I'm very, very proud to be representing the dialogue that we had with more than 20 women. We discussed about many different issues with the women in Honduras, and particularly the issue around care economy. So the reality is, as Migdonia, the director of the University Observatory Against Violence, indicates that violence, and in particular gender discrimination and violence against women and girls, is a reality, regardless of age, regardless of background. And women are victims and survivors of violence. The normalization of violence against women and girls, and in particular the normalization of femicides, is something of great concern. And how does this normalization happen? The women are telling us it happens. Why? Because 95% of the cases of violence against women and girls and femicides are left in impunity. And as Eva Sanchez, the leader of La Zormiga, from one of the indigenous groups of Honduras, they are very, very clear that the intersectionality plays another key role. If you are that, you are an indigenous woman. You are an indigenous woman with disability. You are an indigenous lesbian woman. Different level of intersectionality, which increase the issues and increase the huge discrimination and challenges of women. We heard also from the Garifuna, one of the Afro-descendant groups in Honduras, which is equivalent to around 6% of the population. Huge issue of discrimination with an institutionalized level of racism within institutions, within organizations, that make it very difficult for an Afro-descendant Honduran woman to get even listened at, if not attended in many cases. And Calixta Martinez, as I said, the Garifuna leader from Atlantic Coast, tell us that this affects also the issue around migration, because women, more and more women, mothers, single mothers, or family, or as part of members of families, try to make their way to the north in illegal migration. And I will end with Marcia, a young woman who says, independently from everything, we have to maintain hope. We have to maintain the passion and the commitment to make things happen. Thank you for listening to Honduras women, and thank you for replicating the voices around the world.
Thank you so much, Alice. Thank you, Gabrielle and Angela. You've given us so much to unpack, and we're running out of time, but I want to give a chance to both the DSG and the Executive Director to reflect on this, as well as something that we mentioned also in the very beginning around mental health being one of the obstacles that women recognize to being able, that's blocking them from realizing their full potential. a lot of heavy issues, but I loved what Alice said at the end, there's still hope. What are your reflections, DSG, and then Executive Director?
Well, my reflections are, also one of the things that I keep hearing when I visit countries from women who are taking the lead is one woman told me the other day, she said, there is nothing we women cannot do. And this is, I think, is a very inspirational and very important message coming from women to us, to all women around the world, on wanting to stay optimistic and doing what needs to be done, as I mentioned earlier. I think we have now upcoming Beijing Plus 30, where we are going to be looking at and evaluating what we have done with women, for women throughout the past 30 years, but also to see what are the next 30 years are going to bring for women and what else needs to be included in our commitments, in the country's commitment, government's commitment, NGOs, private sector, everyone. What will be our commitments for women and girls in the next 30 years? So this is an important milestone that is going to happen as we move forward, and so does the Summit of the Future coming up in September. I just want to make a quick, maybe a brief remark on mental health. We know that this statistics is there. It is not surprising. We know that women are twice as likely to be in depression more than men because of the inequalities they face, because of the hard life that they face, because their rights are not, fully exercised as men. Men take their rights for granted, while women have to continue to fight for their rights, to fight against domestic violence, to fight against violence. Even in crises and wars, we know that the brunt is paid by women and girls. So in general, I would like to say that, as I mentioned in the beginning, women are realistic, they are optimistic, and they are ready to take the lead, and we need to support them to do that.
How do I follow that? Look, let me speak frankly to mental health, because I think finally, after all these years, we put the head back on the body and didn't leave it in a corner of shame. And that is about our well-being from head to toe. And so important, because today we are faced with many different challenges, and maybe what brought this back to the fore were the incidences that came in the aftermath of COVID. And COVID really did underscore how this was an intergenerational issue. More than that, I think it made us think through how much mental health, particularly women, are left to recover with for the rest of their lives in context of conflict. Terrorism, for me, a direct experience in Nigeria with Boko Haram. These are going to be girls and families that will go for the rest of their lives trying to heal. But more recently, the rapes in Ethiopia, in Tigray, in Sudan, coming across the border into Chad, with the horrors in Gaza that people are yet to come to an end with. We're still living in hope that that will happen. But also to talk about AI, the event of AI and social media and what that's bringing, wreaking havoc in many women's lives. I do want to say that there are perhaps two aspects to this that we need to bring more to the fore. One is the demographic. And first of all, to say that while we see women probably suffering more, I think that there are many more men out there that we don't know about because men don't talk about mental health. And I think the results of this are seen in gender-based violence. They're seen in many causes, the symptoms that we see in societies with women. So really a big look at both men and women, especially women. The age demographic gives us great concern because there are more young people who are coming forth with this, and a lot of it's got to do with our communities and our society, but they're stretched now with the challenges that come forth, and it's not everywhere in the world that you have your community at hand, and so therefore people are far more susceptible to mental health, and then just not to forget the aged, because that's another demographic that survived on the community. And on society, and who would put their mother away, not unless you really had no options and you thought there was a safer and better place, but not necessarily is it. So again, the age, which is a huge demographic of 1 billion people or so. The other side to this is the spectrum of mental health, that we don't just put it in one box. because, from anxiety to bipolar to many mental health illnesses, they're related to the physical. And to see that and to know that actually we don't have the answers. So a lot more money needs to go into research, into the health system, to make sure that we're ready and we're prepared for this, and to say we don't know and we've got to find the solutions, and please do it with the people that are concerned. Don't prescribe, have these conversations with people that are involved in it, because then it brings me back to what Seema had said, the discrimination and the feeling that this is not something I can talk about. Same thing happened with HIV and AIDS. The same thing is happening with LGBTQI communities, and so too with mental health. Is that feeling that I cannot come out and talk about this, and therefore there are no solutions and there will be no healing to it. But and then maybe just to shout out to Gabrielle, I was in Barbados yesterday for about 3 days, and it was an amazing experience to see strong, powerful women's voices, starting from your Prime Minister, but also your parliamentarians and those that were talking on the global supply chain to climate, and the issue of food security, and flying over Barbados and seeing scorched earth, because there's a lot of brown, so everyone is waiting for the rains and to really deal with that. So again, I'm sure climate is going to cause a lot of anxiety too. Back to the mental health.
Thank you, DSG. Thank you, Executive Director. Thanks to all our incredible guests for this conversation that really just starts us on our journey of, as we delve deeper into the data, as we learn more, as we receive the information coming from all of these intergenerational dialogues, we're looking forward to sharing that next part of the conversation. So we have this small tradition here where we end with asking each of you one word of how you're feeling right now about moving forward around We the Women. And so let me start with Seema, one word from you.
I feel optimistic, actually very optimistic, and we need to capture that.
Alice?
I feel love. I think we need more love. I think there's a lot of hate speech, a lot of discrimination. I think love, love, and love.
Thank you. Gabrielle?
My word would absolutely be equity. Equity is the perpetual doorway to opportunity for all, so definitely equity.
And Angela?
I feel mobilized. I feel that with all of the information that's coming in through the survey and the intergenerational dialogues, it's such a wonderful moment for us to all come together and think through our course of action and how to make real change.
And Deputy Secretary General, the last word.
2 words. I would say that I'm incredibly hopeful, but that the struggle continues.
The struggle continues. Thank you, DSG, and to all our guests for engaging in this critical dialogue, the first of many for We the Women. We hope the discussion has highlighted the importance of women's transformative leadership. We have many more important findings in the survey, including on issues like generative AI. In the next few weeks, there'll be more opportunities to get involved, so stay tuned. And in the meantime, please follow the links on the screen. We hope that women's voices, challenges, and perspectives will help shape global solutions for the world, starting now into the Summit of the Future, and then beyond to Beijing Plus 30, and even beyond that. Again, thank you all very much, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
I came all the way to Osaki to create a future where all resources circulate and where mining of additional fossil fuels is reduced. Osaki town has achieved a recycling rate of more than 80%, which is the highest through Japan. In Osaki town, waste is sorted into 27 different categories. Since there is no incineration plant, only these blue bags goes directly to the landfill without getting incinerated, and other 26 categories will be sorted and recycled properly.
もうね、長いことやってたらもう自分たちはもうそのままでもうそれこそ当たり前と思ってしてるから、別にあれありませんね。
Of course, there are some waste that cannot be recycled properly without incineration. However, I think waste management should not be designed with an incineration plant included from the beginning.
私たちの町自体はそのゴミを燃やすとかそういった焼却炉というのをもともと持たない町であります。そしてまたこれからも焼却炉を作るとか持つとかそういったことを全く考えていない町でありますので、もうずっとそのゴミの分別を続けていく、そんな感じの町なんです。
Collected recyclable waste comes to this place called the Soa Recycling Center. Citizens will sort into 27 categories at their homes, but this center will further separate it into more than 40 categories. And plastics will be separated into hard types and packages and then compressed. And cans will be separated into aluminiums and steels with this separation machine. Composite materials such as pans, because they have a plastic handle, they are cracked by hammers and will be separated by hands. The compressed waste will then be taken to recycling factories all over the country. The profits from trading recyclable waste are used as a scholarship of students from Osaki. Food wastes are collected 3 times a week with this blue bucket. When the food wastes are brought here, they get crushed into smaller pieces. Prune plants will also be brought in here and they will be crushed together. And they are mixed together with the food waste. The prune plant also contains many native microorganisms. As they get active by decomposing the food waste, the waste turns into a rich compost. The steam is rising from the pile because the microorganisms are very active. The pile will be left to rest for another couple of months until the decomposing process of microorganisms ends completely. The whole process will take about 5 to 6 months. Almost all the compost is used at farms in Osaki. And rape flowers are grown at those farms to make a rape seed oil. The whole process of decomposing food waste doesn't need chemicals or any other substances, but just rely on the native microorganisms. I think the process is very simple and can be practiced anywhere in the world. Actually, this process has been introduced to Indonesia through the JICA partnership program. Osaki town officials and the recycling center staff went to Indonesia to show the techniques of separating and composting food waste. This may become a solution to waste management issues that a lot of developing nations faces right now. Even if we try to recycle everything, there are still many packages that cannot be sorted well. So currently I'm working with companies to create recyclable products. What would you think if somebody told you that your hometown will disappear in decades due to climate change? I grew up in a small island, Tuvalu, in the South Pacific. There I experienced a life very close to nature and community. I went back to Tuvalu when I was in high school and realized that the country is suffering from the rising sea levels and extreme drought due to climate change. And I cannot express such a feeling when I knew that my hometown and my old playground will disappear in near future. One day, your hometown and even this Osaki town may become a habitable place. I myself don't want to experience such an unhappy future. Nor do I want my children or the generations after to experience that. The pine forest spreading by the leech of Osaki town is a vast windbreak with a total length of 24 kilometers. Hundreds of years ago, our ancestors planted these trees to protect the town from heavy winds and sands from the ocean. But they did this for the future generation rather than for themselves, because they knew that the trees would take hundreds of years to grow. And now I feel like it is my turn, and I came here to create a circular economy that leads to mitigation of climate change for the future generations.
Welcome to UN Insider. I'm Elaine Reyes at the United Nations headquarters in New York.
Development is about addressing poverty because this is one of the greatest drivers right now of progress and recovery.
Climate change is already a reality in today's world. It affects the entire planet.
Diplomats are working to find solutions for some of the biggest global challenges, from armed conflicts to the climate crisis and efforts to eliminate poverty and ensure equality.
We can't allow anybody to fall behind in education. This is the future of our societies, so we need to understand how to invest better.
We need to strengthen and renew global peace and security frameworks to deal with the complexities of today's multipolar world.
The UN is calling for increased international cooperation to stimulate growth and accelerate progress toward the Sustainable Development Goals. How important are the different perspectives when it comes to trying to solve major conflicts?
It's extremely important because conflicts are not unidimensional.
Thanks for being a UN Insider.
Bem-vindos a este debate especial da ONU News sobre o aniversário de 50 anos da Revolução de 25 de Abril em Portugal, conhecida como Revolução dos Cravos.
Olá a todos, obrigada por se juntar a nós para discutir o impacto desse evento histórico nos acontecimentos políticos em Portugal e no mundo.
Nesta conversa, vamos explorar como as Nações Unidas estiveram no centro dos debates e da diplomacia, enquanto muitas colônias portuguesas lutavam pela liberdade e a nação europeia passava do autoritarismo para a democracia.
E para nos aprofundarmos nesse fascinante capítulo, teremos a companhia de estimados convidados no estúdio: o secretário-geral das Nações Unidas, António Guterres, e 6 representantes permanentes que atuam como embaixadores na ONU.
Confira agora algumas imagens da Revolução dos Cravos. Olá, eu sou Felipe Coalho e temos o prazer de ter aqui conosco o secretário-geral das Nações Unidas, Antônio Guterres, e mais 6 convidados. São os representantes permanentes aqui na ONU de Angola, Brasil, Cabo Verde, Moçambique, Portugal e Timor-Leste.
Eu sou a Marta Moreira, co-moderadora deste debate, e neste primeiro segmento teremos apenas o secretário-geral da ONU, António Guterres, para compartilhar as lembranças dos eventos que marcaram esta revolução democrática, pacífica em Portugal, mas também a sua relevância em termos globais. Obrigada, Sr. secretário-geral António Guterres. Pergunto-lhe qual foi o impacto desta revolução politicamente e globalmente.
Em primeiro lugar, creio que é necessário fazer justiça e estou muito satisfeito por estar aqui com os representantes dos países de língua portuguesa e, em particular, dos países africanos de língua portuguesa. Porque há, muitas vezes, esta ideia de que o 25 de Abril foi uma revolução portuguesa e que, na sequência dessa revolução portuguesa, que criou a democracia em Portugal, ou recriou a democracia em Portugal, foi possível a descolonização. Ora, a verdade é que não teria havido 25 de Abril sem o que foi a luta dos movimentos de libertação africanos. E creio que essa justiça deve ser feita. Há uma ligação muito direta entre a luta pela democracia em Portugal, que leva ao 25 de Abril, e a luta dos movimentos de libertação africanos, que levam à sua independência. E as duas coisas estão interligadas. E por isso não há aqui uma relação de causa e efeito. há aqui uma interpenetração profunda do processo que decorre em Portugal na luta contra a ditadura e do processo que decorre nos países africanos, na altura colónias portuguesas, dos movimentos de libertação contra o colonialismo português. E o que para nós foi extraordinário na vivência desse dia foi um profundo sentido de libertação. As pessoas hoje não fazem ideia, quando vivem em Portugal, do que é viver num país onde não há liberdade de organização, nem de sindicatos, nem de associações as mais diversas, não há liberdade de expressão, há censura, a expressão artística é condicionada e há uma forte repressão a todos aqueles que ousam criticar a ditadura em Portugal e, ao mesmo tempo, uma opressão extremamente pesada sobre os países, na altura, as colónias portuguesas, onde, aliás, o nível de repressão era muitíssimo mais violento do que em Portugal, propriamente dito. Ora, hoje nós consideramos que é normal viver em democracia, que é normal dizer o que pensamos, que é normal organizarmos-nos como entendemos para defender os nossos interesses e não damos valor ao que foi o extraordinário combate dos movimentos de libertação africanos e a extraordinária coragem daqueles que, em Portugal, primeiro os militares e depois o povo, que se juntou maciçamente nas ruas, nos libertaram da ditadura e nos libertaram da opressão colonial. É um sentido de, como disse, profunda libertação, ao qual hoje já não somos capazes de dar o devido valor, porque as novas gerações não tiveram essa experiência do que é viver num regime ditatorial e num regime opressivo de outros povos.
Secretário-geral, naquele momento, o que fez com que o senhor e todos aqueles que se levantaram contra a autocracia em Portugal acreditassem que estavam do lado certo da história?
Vamos lá ver. Em primeiro lugar, uma ditadura é algo de inaceitável. Todos, mulheres e homens, temos os mesmos direitos e todos temos uma aspiração profunda à liberdade. E, portanto, estar do lado da liberdade contra a opressão é estar do lado certo. Acho que isso não tem dúvida nenhuma. Mas aqui também há um aspecto de estar do lado certo do ponto de vista histórico. O colonialismo foi o que foi e foi um processo que durou séculos e que teve consequências trágicas para os países colonizados. Podemos falar da escravatura como um dos aspectos e do movimento transatlântico da escravatura como uma das maiores tragédias da humanidade. Simultaneamente, nós assistimos, durante um período largo da história da humanidade, à possibilidade de um conjunto de países que se desenvolveram mais rapidamente, do ponto de vista tecnológico, com armamentos mais modernos, etc., de oprimirem uma grande parte do resto do mundo. Ora bem, há aqui um movimento natural. Num dado momento é preciso restabelecer a igualdade entre os povos. É preciso restabelecer a liberdade de todos os povos. E aí, infelizmente, Portugal veio muito tarde. Quer dizer, se alguma coisa podemos criticar no 25 de Abril, ou podemos criticar, foi que o 25 de Abril, do ponto de vista histórico, deveria ter ocorrido décadas mais cedo. A ideia de que era possível manter um império colonial no século XX, como o Salazar pensava, era não só uma ideia profundamente inaceitável do ponto de vista político e moral, mas era uma ideia absurda, porque era evidente que um país pobre, pequeno como Portugal, não tinha condições para o fazer e hoje muitas vezes não se tem a noção do que foi também o sofrimento dos portugueses, que levou mais de 1 milhão de portugueses, na década de 60, a sair do país. Muitos deles porque não queriam fazer serviço militar, e muitos outros porque simplesmente o país não estava a desenvolver-se e não estava a criar as condições e as oportunidades necessárias. E, portanto, é claro que Estamos do lado certo da história, libertando um país da ditadura, e estamos do lado certo da história, restabelecendo justiça nas relações internacionais, depois de um passado colonial que é inaceitável.
Senhor Secretário-Geral, para terminar, alguma mensagem ou comentário adicional que queira deixar para assinalar estes 50 anos do 25 de Abril?
Uma mensagem de grande esperança de que a comunidade dos países de língua portuguesa, que está em todos os continentes, e onde há hoje um profundo sentido de fraternidade, que infelizmente falta no mundo, onde vemos divisões profundas, guerras e conflitos por toda a parte, que esta comunidade, que é um símbolo de paz, possa ter um papel decisivo em restabelecer a confiança que está perdida, infelizmente, no nosso mundo e em restabelecer as condições que nos possam permitir não apenas mais paz, mas ao mesmo tempo um desenvolvimento mais justo, o respeito dos direitos humanos e a ultrapassagem das dramáticas divisões que hoje pesam sobre nós todos como uma ameaça ao futuro da humanidade.
Obrigada pela sua participação nesta discussão e antes de prosseguirmos com os embaixadores, vamos assistir a algumas memórias de há 50 anos.